The day of the naming ceremony, the mute little princess opened her mouth and called out, "Papa!" instantly capturing the heart of her ice-cold father. In her previous life, the girl was the last surviving human on Earth, an S-rank hunter. And the one responsible for humanity's extinction, the Demon King, was the very man standing before her. Even if she was the only person left in the world, she was determined to complete her mission, destroy the Demon King. Because he had taken everyone she loved. After a fierce and brutal battle, the girl knocked the mask from the Demon King's face. Only then did she see him clearly, and to her shock, he was a former colleague. No matter how beautiful the memories between them once were, they could never outweigh the blood of her family on his hands. Without giving him a chance to speak, she raised her sword and brought it down. The system chimed. She had completed her mission. The Demon King was dead. And in that same moment, she crumpled to the ground. She tried to call up the system to check on her condition, but it kept throwing errors. After repeated attempts, the system finally responded. The scan confirmed it. Her organs were failing rapidly, with no chance of recovery. To her, that outcome was almost a relief. Living on alone had been unbearable. She could finally be reunited with her family. Then the system suddenly bombarded her with prompts. Did she want to claim her mission completion reward? It was the last thing she needed right now. Out of morbid curiosity about what a system could possibly offer a dying woman, she pressed accept. The system promptly crashed again, and she could hold on no longer. In her final moments, she heard the system chime one last time. "Congratulations, host. Compensation package authorized. As a bonus reward for completing an SSS rank mission, your abilities from your previous life will be retained. Magic level has also been upgraded to S+. Are you serious? I die and I still can't escape this wretched system? And what does previous life even mean?" While she was still puzzling over that, she suddenly jolted awake. The familiar system chime rang out. "Congratulations, host. Reincarnation successful." The girl stared at her tiny little hands. She had been reborn, but this body was absurdly small. And wasn't she supposed to be the last living person on Earth? Who on Earth would take care of her like this? She vented her frustration at the system pop-up window. Why on earth had it reincarnated her as a nursing infant? But when she calmed down and looked around, she noticed her surroundings were spotlessly clean and orderly. In her previous life, the Demon King's arrival had reduced the world to rubble, so this was clearly a different world entirely. Which meant other people existed here, she just had to get their attention. She immediately tried calling out for help. She discovered she couldn't make a sound. Could her luck possibly get any worse? Fortunately, a woman entered the room at that moment. She gently scooped the girl into her arms. "Your Highness, today is your naming ceremony. Are you nervous?" With that, the woman carried her into the banquet hall. Faced with a room full of people, the woman looked uneasy. "Don't be afraid, little princess." Hearing that title, the girl's mind immediately conjured scenes from fairy tales. She felt a sudden rush of excitement for what lay ahead. But soon, the murmuring of the crowd dampened her spirits. Apparently, she was the infamous mute princess, developmentally delayed and widely pitied. At this naming ceremony, if she failed to make the sunstone glow, she might even be stripped of her title as princess. The situation was far from encouraging. The woman then lifted her before a large stone and told her to place her hand on it. Legend had it the stone would light up when it sensed magical power. The girl touched it skeptically, and the sunstone erupted in a blinding blaze of light. It was a declaration. This girl carried immense magical power within her. A golden-haired man stepped forward, flanked by priests. "Hear me, everyone. The princess has proven her royal bloodline. From this moment on, I bestow upon her the imperial name. Anatritia Rustem, that is the princess's name." The moment the girl laid eyes on the man, her heart seized with emotion. He looked so much like her father from her previous life. It was uncanny. Without thinking, she burst into tears and cried out, "Papa!" Strangely, the moment she saw him, her voice came back to her. The king, hearing his daughter speak for the first time, was utterly stunned. He could only accept her into his arms, not knowing what else to do. The girl looked at the little one who had burst into the most radiant smile the moment she saw him, and felt something in his heart quietly soften. Because she adored her big brother so much, the 1-year-old little princess grabbed him and dragged him right into her crib. Then she unleashed a flurry of tiny fist attacks on him in the name of love. Not long before, the girl's extraordinary performance at the naming ceremony, had piqued the cold king's curiosity. The reason she had reacted so intensely upon seeing him was that he looked as though he had been carved from the same mold as her father in her previous life. 13 years had passed since her father fell in battle. The moment she saw the king, the grief she had buried came flooding back. Perhaps this was what the system's so-called reward truly meant, a chance to reunite with the family she had lost, reborn in this new life. To her delight, it wasn't just her family from before. Even Uncle Yuming, who shared no blood with her, had appeared in this world. Uncle Yuming had been her father's comrade in arms, and had watched her grow up since she was small. He was in every way that mattered a second father to her. When he and her father fell together in battle, she had been only 12, and it had broken her heart. Seeing them both alive and standing before her now felt like a miracle. Though soon enough, father and uncle both left to attend to affairs of state. Back in the wet nurse's arms, the girl felt a pang of longing, but the joy of being reunited with them again far outweighed it. Still, the fact remained that this body had gone so long without making a sound that speaking came out strangely garbled. She would have to find opportunities to practice her pronunciation properly. Just then, the wet nurse suddenly lit up with excitement. "Oh, it's already time for the princess's meal. You stay right here and be good." And just like that, the enormous nursery was hers alone. The girl lay back and began to replay the day's events in her mind. A system pop-up appeared, reward claim complete. But she had no memory of claiming anything. She tried to tap the pop-up to see the details, only to find she couldn't reach it. It floated far too high. She decided to try a voice command instead, but her words came out so garbled that the system rejected every attempt as an invalid command. Furious, she launched a spinning kick at the system window with her stubby little legs. This wretched system was clearly doing this to spite her. Then a voice suddenly broke through. "What exactly are you doing?" The girl startled. She looked up and found a face that looked just like the king, her father. Was this her brother? The moment she saw him, memories came rushing back. In her previous life, her brother had been the last family member by her side. When the Demon King attacked, he had shoved her out of harm's way and taken every blow himself. His last words were for her to run. What an absolute fool. As she thought of him, the face of her brother from that life slowly merged with the silver-haired boy standing before her. The girl began to weep. The little boy was completely at a loss. "Please stop crying, little sister." Just as her brother was racking his brain for a way to make her stop, the girl suddenly grabbed a fistful of his hair and yanked him straight into the crib. Then she launched into her signature flurry of tiny fist attacks. Her brother yelped and howled. He had absolutely no idea what he had done wrong. But the more he protested, the angrier she got. She grabbed his hair again and kept pummeling. "You idiot! Who told you to leave me all alone? Thank goodness we found each other again in this life." The commotion quickly drew the attention of the maids, who immediately turned on her brother with a scolding. "Prince Lian, you must not bully the princess." Her brother was mortified. Standing helplessly inside the crib, he couldn't explain himself at all. When he finally climbed out and tried to point the finger at the girl as the real culprit, things got extremely awkward. The maids simply refused to believe that a nursing infant could have done any such thing. Her brother was on the verge of tears from sheer injustice. Watching him suffer, the girl couldn't help but find it a little funny. So she threw herself into his arms, then leaned up to his ear and whispered a warning. "Drop it. Push this any further, and you'll regret it." He covered his ear, utterly incredulous. He still couldn't believe his 1-year-old sister had just threatened him. But in the end, he swallowed the injustice in silence. After all, his little sister had only him to dote on her. After days of trying, the girl finally managed to open the system, and the system immediately notified her of completed missions. Apparently, last night's encounter with her brother had unknowingly completed the Tame the Brother mission, and it had been completed almost the moment it was issued. Absurd, truly only she could pull something like that off. Just as she was about to claim her reward, the system crashed again. She was thoroughly fed up with this broken thing. It always fell apart at the worst possible moment. The reincarnated little princess had stumbled upon a troubling discovery. Her mother was nowhere to be found, and everyone seemed to have silently agreed to never mention her mother's whereabouts. Was a happy ending still out of reach even in this life? Not long before, just as the girl was about to claim her mission reward, the system had crashed yet again. For a glitch that had now happened more times than she could count, Even a 1-year-old infant had some choice words for it. But she wasn't ready to give up. After countless attempts, the system finally coughed up a compensation reward. So it really did work this way every time it crashed. Still irritating, but she'd take it. Better claim it before anything else. The compensation reward went through without a hitch, surprisingly smooth. The system handed her an S-rank skill. Filled with anticipation, she went to see what new skill she had gained. And the moment she read the skill name, her mind went completely blank. PP Boing Boing of Encouragement and Growth. When activated, it triggers or restores the target's magic circuit, limited to 5 uses. What on earth was this ridiculous skill? Still, she imagined using it on Uncle Yuming. He'd probably squeal and refuse to let go of her for days. Terrifying thought. Better seal this skill away for now. After closing the skill window, a flood of mission completion notifications popped up. These appeared to be mission records from just after her birth. All routine milestones any child would reach while growing up. The system just wanted her to develop properly. Did that mean the Demon King would appear in this world too? She forced herself not to go down that path. She hadn't even seen her mother yet. Thinking back to the compensation reward she'd just gotten, the girl started hammering on the system again, trying to force another crash. After some persistence, the system obligingly crashed once more, rewarding her with an E-rank item, a growth potion. As an S-rank hunter in her previous life, she wouldn't have glanced twice at something like this, but in this life, she needed it badly. She grabbed the bottle and downed the whole thing at once. The system promptly reported growth value +1. And the next morning, the effects made themselves known. When the maids watched the girl drain an entire bottle of milk without stopping, they erupted with delight. They tried feeding her solid food next. Seeing her eat so well, they couldn't hold back their tears. They had tried hundreds of times before without success. She was finally eating solid food. After all that, growth value went up another +1. The girl gripped the railing of her crib and started practicing how to stand. The wet nurse thought perhaps this was a good moment to work on walking. She scooped the girl up at once and started coaxing and calling to her from a little distance away. The girl obediently tried step by careful step. She tumbled in the end, of course, but a plush bumblebee pillow saved her head from the floor. The maids were more than satisfied, because she had taken 5 whole independent steps. To commemorate the girl learning to walk, the maids immediately marked the spot on the floor. The girl turned pink with embarrassment. The wet nurse gathered her up with a look of deep contentment. If Her Majesty the Queen could see you now, she would be so happy. The moment the wet nurse said it, a shadow crossed the faces of the maids. The girl noticed something was off. Come to think of it, since her reincarnation, her mother had never once come to see her. Even Uncle Yuming had visited long ago. Maybe her mother was simply too busy, being the queen. She would have to find a chance to ask the person most likely to know the truth. So when her brother came bounding in to see her that day, the girl put on a forlorn expression and kept murmuring, "Mama," over and over. The moment her brother heard it, his face went rigid. He blurted out, "I don't know," at the top of his lungs, called her an idiot, and ran. Seeing his reaction, the girl was struck by a terrible premonition. Was her mother in this life already gone? The thought overwhelmed her, and she burst into tears. In her previous life, whenever she had cried as a child, her mother would tell her not to. She had said a woman only cries 3 times in her life, so unless something was truly heartbreaking, tears should not fall easily. The girl had taken those words to heart and grown into someone strong. But if the very person who had said those words was gone, what did any of it matter? In her previous life, it had been father who left first. In this one, was it mother? That wretched system was never going to let her be happy, simply because he had no magic. The Empire's only prince had been demanded by the son of a minister to kneel before him in public, and that was something his little sister, his fiercest defender, could absolutely not allow. Her brother was hers to protect. Not long before, the girl had wept herself raw over the uncertainty of her mother's fate. Since then, she had lost her appetite entirely. Her mood was consistently dark. The maids were at their wits' end. They scrambled to bring toy after toy, desperate to coax a smile out of her. But nothing seemed to work. The girl herself knew this couldn't go on. The maids were probably terrified she was reverting to her helpless, unresponsive state. For her own sake, and for theirs, she had to pull herself together. Finally, she walked over to the toys and began to play. The wet nurse exhaled with relief. But the moment she picked up the toy blocks, something felt off. These weren't ordinary blocks, they were magic stones. In her previous life, you could only get these by killing monsters. She hadn't expected to find them just lying around here. When she quickly sorted the blocks into place, the maids exclaimed that she was a genius, and her adorable little face made them want to squeeze her endlessly. The girl found their overblown enthusiasm a little mortifying. But her mother would probably have loved these magic stones too, she thought. And just like that, the sadness crept back in. The maid noticed at once and swept her into her arms. A maid scooped her up immediately. "Princess, let's go check on the prince." Soon the maids had brought her to the training grounds. And there they walked straight into the sight of her brother being bullied. A group of ministers' children had surrounded him, mocking him as a worthless prince with no mother and no magic, demanding he kneel before the Grand Duke's son, and declaring that that boy would one day be king. Hearing that, the girl's blood boiled. That little brat actually dared to treat her brother this way? And the attendants were just standing there watching. Furious, she yelled at the group of boys, "Get away from him! Are you looking for a beating?" Her outburst instantly drew the attention of all three boys. When they saw who it was, the yellow-haired one pointed to his own head in mockery. "Who did I think it was? It's the idiot princess. Have you lost your mind?" Then again, a worthless prince and an idiot princess. You two are a perfect match. The girl was so furious she pointed at him but couldn't get a single word out. She was going to teach this little brat a lesson he would never forget. But someone beat her to it. Her brother grabbed the yellow-haired boy by the collar. "Don't you dare talk about my sister!" That single move finally seemed to snap the attendants out of their stupor. They rushed over in a panic. Not to protect her brother, but to drop to their knees and beg on behalf of the yellow-haired boy. "Young master, please forgive the prince. He's still young. He simply didn't understand the situation." Then they tried to push her brother toward the boy and make him apologize. Seeing this, the yellow-haired boy immediately grew smug. "If you're willing to kneel and admit your mistake, I might graciously forgive you, and I'll even allow you to keep living in this palace until you come of age." Hearing that, her brother suddenly bent his knee slightly and the girl's heart seized. How could her brother possibly bow to someone like this? But the very next second, her brother drove his head upward straight into the boy's chin, sending him sprawling flat on his back. "You want me to apologize to you, you piece of trash? In your dreams. Now get out of my home, immediately." The so-called worthless prince had finally awakened his magic. This time he was going to make every single person who had ever bullied them pay. He was going to become his little sister's most powerful protector. As the Empire's only prince, her brother had failed to make the sunstone glow on the day of his naming ceremony. A sunstone that didn't light up meant no magical power. In an empire that worshipped strength above all else, someone without magic had no right to be king, not even a prince. From that day on, her brother had been branded the worthless prince. No one cared how he felt. Even when he took the initiative to ask for lessons in statecraft, his tutor responded with nothing but cruel mockery. But even so, her brother never stopped trying to improve himself, because he wanted to become his little sister's unshakable protector. So whenever anyone dared to bully her, he would strike back without hesitation. Looking down at the Grand Duke's son sprawled on the ground, her brother's eyes went cold. The yellow-haired boy's little followers were thoroughly terrified by what he had done. In that moment, he reminded them of the ruthless king himself. It was frightening. Only the girl withheld nothing in her admiration. And with that, something in her brother's heart quietly softened. His little sister was the best thing in his world. Wanting to encourage him, the girl reached up her small hand to pat his head. She then realized embarrassingly that she couldn't reach. The wet nurse held out her arms to lift her, but the girl stubbornly insisted she could manage on her own. Her brother told her to try again. Even on the tips of her toes, straining with everything she had, she still couldn't reach his head. She even toppled over in the attempt. At last, she admitted defeat. She hadn't expected her brother to already be so tall at only 7 years old. Then suddenly, her brother's head dipped down. He gently took her small hand and placed it on top of his head. "There, can you reach now?" She was a little annoyed by his theatrics, but she cheered him on wholeheartedly all the same. Just then, the unconscious yellow-haired boy stirred awake. He immediately berated her brother for being a worthless waste who had dared to injure him, then turned and started kicking his own followers, and finally demanded once again that her brother kneel and beg for mercy. This time, the two of them simply ignored him. That sent the yellow-haired boy into a full rage. He actually tried to cast a spell on the two siblings. But the girl was not about to let him cause trouble here. She immediately threw up a protective barrier around the wet nurse and the others, and then launched her own spell in return. The boy, rattled and unthinking, shook off everyone trying to stop him, and hurled a fireball straight at them. Her brother saw the danger and stepped in front of her without a second thought, just like he had in her previous life. But this time, the girl refused to lose him again. She immediately unleashed a high-level spell, summoning a fire phoenix and sending it straight at the yellow-haired boy. He stumbled backward in terror. The next second, the phoenix was furiously pecking at his head. Unable to bear the pain, he turned and fled. And somewhere in the middle of running, he discovered he had wet himself. His dignity was completely and permanently destroyed. Worse, there were so many witnesses. He had the two siblings to thank for all of it. He wheeled around and screamed at her brother, "I'm warning you. Don't get too pleased with yourself. Even if you beat me, you're still a worthless waste. That never changes." Her brother merely shrugged. "Does it look any different that you lost to my little sister?" That shut the yellow-haired boy up completely. Watching her brother finally stand his ground, the girl felt a deep satisfaction, so she decided to give him a proper boost. She slipped around behind him and used the PP Boing Boing skill. The moment she activated it, a strange light radiated from her brother's entire body. He instantly unlocked A-rank magic. If he trained steadily, he would climb to S rank, the same level he had reached in their previous life, before long. And her brother, newly awakened to his power, demonstrated his strength for everyone present. It was enough to send the yellow-haired boy crashing back to the ground in terror. The question of who was worthless was no longer so clear-cut. That day, the sunstone glowed twice, and each time the light was extraordinarily brilliant, a sight not seen in 1,000 years. While it was rare for magic to awaken after the age of 5, the sunstone's blazing light left no room for doubt. Her brother's magical power was immense. To repair the rift between father and her brother, the girl decided to bring her brother with her to see father. To her surprise, her brother resisted the idea fiercely. Not long before, her brother had finally awakened his magic. Father had been deeply moved. He immediately ordered the head attendant to record her brother's name in the Book of the Sun. The head attendant watched the king, who finally seemed a little less closed off. Since that incident a year ago, he had not been able to claw his way out of grief. He had even neglected the two children, leaving them to suffer alone within the palace walls. But now, with the prince's awakening, there was finally a reason to hold back the ambitious House Balon. House Balon was the most powerful family outside the royal house, and they had long set their sights on the throne. Because her brother was considered worthless and the girl was believed to be dim-witted, they had already come to think of the throne as theirs for the taking. So when the two siblings unexpectedly awakened their magic in quick succession, it threw Lady Balon into a panic. If the royal heirs were truly this exceptional, how could they ever seize the throne? Then her daughter came running over to comfort her. "Don't worry, mother. I will reclaim everything that belongs to our family." And so House Balon began plotting a far more dangerous scheme. But the girl had no idea any of this was happening. Right now, she was focused on eating as much as possible to grow up faster. The maids were overjoyed. They absolutely loved feeding her. After she finished the last spoonful of solid food, the system chimed with a mission complete notification. The girl had finally gotten the growth potion she had been waiting for. She hadn't expected it to be bubble tea flavor, the best possible outcome. She was happily drinking it when her brother suddenly burst in and nearly scared her to death. Remembering how this person had spent half their previous life snatching food and drinks from her, the girl had a very bad feeling. Sure enough, the next second her brother planted himself on the floor, pouting and begging her to let him have a taste. To avoid drawing attention, the girl gritted her teeth and exchanged for a bottle to give him. The poor thing even thought she had a soft spot for him. He had no idea the bottle she gave him was the absolutely vile boiled cabbage flavor. Her brother took one sip and nearly died on the spot. The girl put on her sweetest face. "You have to finish every last drop, brother. Otherwise, I'll be cross with you." Unable to bear the thought of upsetting his precious little sister, her brother forced the entire bottle down. He then collapsed flat on the floor, still just as weak as he had been in their previous life. But come to think of it, shouldn't he be in class right now? When she pointed this out, her brother waved her off dismissively. "No class today." Having been siblings for over 20 years, she could read him like a book. She saw the lie immediately. But no matter how many times she tried to chase him away, even invoking father's name, he refused to budge. It seemed the relationship between father and her brother in this life was a complicated one. That evening, back in his own quarters, her brother immediately began cleaning house, dismissing every attendant who had given him the cold shoulder for years. He had long known they were all spies for House Balon. He finally had an opportunity to be rid of them. The head attendant happened to walk in on all of this. He immediately dropped to his knees and begged forgiveness. "This is entirely my failure. Please punish me, Your Highness." Her brother forgave him generously and asked him to explain his visit. The head attendant promptly produced the legendary Book of the Sun and held it out to him. This book was the equivalent of a royal genealogy. Every member of the royal family who had ever awakened magical power had their name inscribed within it. Her brother gently placed his hand on the cover. The Book of the Sun erupted in brilliant light. The next instant, her brother's name was etched into its pages. The head attendant offered his congratulations. Reflecting on the day's events, he resolved to conduct a thorough investigation into the backgrounds of every attendant in the palace. He would ensure nothing like this ever happened again. 2 more weeks passed. Since her brother's name had been entered in the Book of the Sun, father had not come to see him even once. Her brother had long since gotten used to it. But he couldn't help feeling sorry for his little sister. If she knew how cold-hearted father really was, how much would it hurt her? She adored him so much. But he would never allow anyone to make his sister cry. Not even father. The girl, through her own careful observations, had concluded that father and son were at odds. But it made no sense to her. In her previous life, her brother and father had been so close. Father in that life had been utterly devoted to his children. He would have happily spent 25 hours a day with them. Yet now he could go long stretches without visiting them at all. And her brother even addressed father as Your Majesty. Clearly, the bond between them had broken down badly. There had to be some kind of misunderstanding. She needed to go to father and find out what had happened. So she immediately proposed going to see father together with her brother. But every time she brought it up, her brother would try to change the subject. Left with no other option, the girl used magic to fly out of her crib and pulled on her brother's hand, pleading with him over and over. Still, he wouldn't agree. Finally, she played her trump card. She announced she would simply go find father by herself. When her brother moved to stop her, she smacked his hand away and walked out without looking back. He watched her go. After a fierce internal battle, he finally gave in and called out to her, saying he would come along. The girl spun around and threw her arms around him. She had known this would work on him. Because his precious daughter was crying, he leapt from 100 meters in the air without hesitation, just to brush the tears from her eyes. Not long before, in her effort to mend the relationship between father and her brother, the girl had coaxed and pressed until she finally convinced her brother to go see father with her. They had barely arrived at father's palace when they ran into the Knight Commander. In this life, Uncle Yuming was every bit as warm and easygoing as he had been in the last. He greeted them both with cheerful familiarity and asked her brother if he could hold the girl. Her brother flatly refused, not because he was afraid Uncle Yuming would drop her, but because his stubble would scratch her face. The commander considered this and found it reasonable. He promptly reached over and picked up her brother instead. "How is it up there, Your Highness? Better air quality?" Both siblings were left completely speechless. At first, her brother protested, embarrassed, telling him to put him down. But he soon started to enjoy himself. Then a voice cut through the warmth. "What is all this noise?" The next second, the king appeared at the windowsill, expression dark. The girl was taken aback. Was he exhausted from work? She immediately reached out her arms toward him, asking to be held. The king only looked at her with a slight frown, no movement at all. His coldness left her completely at a loss. In her previous life, father had been so gentle with her. Then the king told them to leave. This was not a place for playing around, he said. The Knight Commander stepped in quickly. "Your Majesty, the children came specifically to see you. Please don't be too harsh with them." But father still didn't budge. Her brother seemed to have anticipated exactly this. He glared at father with barely concealed anger. The situation was clearly far more complicated than she had imagined. Something must have happened to father. Her brother's attitude made it plain this wasn't a recent development. And it seemed connected to their mother. She couldn't think of any other explanation. Just as she was turning that thought over, a system pop-up appeared. The new mission was to win over Father. Apparently, Father had experienced some kind of trauma a year ago that had turned him into this cold, distant man. The mission was to help him work through it and restore their relationship. But the mission description didn't hint at what that trauma was. She had absolutely no clue how to reach him. And then, of course, the wretched system started crashing again. The flood of error pop-ups hit her eyes all at once and made her burst into tears. Her brother happened to see her like that, and it only deepened his resentment toward Father. "Now you're going to hurt my sister too?" Seeing the girl cry, Father leaped from the window, 100 meters up, without a moment's hesitation, landing before her and gently reaching out to wipe her tears. Just as the girl was still in shock, her brother slapped his hand away. "Please do not touch my sister without permission, Your Majesty. You're the one who made her cry. Only now do you care?" At first, the girl thought her brother had lost his mind, speaking to Father that way. But when she saw that everyone around them had gone silent, she realized this had gone very wrong. If she didn't explain fast, Father was going to look like the kind of man who made his own daughter cry. So she rushed to tell everyone that Father had not been the reason for her tears. Nobody believed her. Her brother even tried to pull her away. With no other choice, she finally used her magic and flung herself straight into Father's arms. She believed with certainty that Father loved them, because the warmth radiating from him, that quiet, gentle light, could not lie. Just as she was hoping to finally get some time alone with Father, her brother dragged her away without mercy. But she was not about to give up. This time she was determined to save Father. To unravel the knot in Father's heart as soon as possible, the girl used magic to fly up to his window 100 meters high, just to deliver a 4-leaf clover she had worked hard to find. Not long before, wanting to mend the rift between Father and her brother, she had forced her brother to come with her to see Father. That had only made things worse thanks to a series of misunderstandings. So to salvage the situation and help Father heal, the girl had launched into her mission. First, she had gone to the garden at the crack of dawn to look for a clover. Then she used magic to fly up to Father's window and deliver it. It had startled him quite badly, to be sure. But Father had treated the clover she brought him like a precious treasure, even keeping it alive in a teacup. The head attendant was so moved he wept. Perhaps the girl truly could thaw the king's long-frozen heart. Beyond showing up at Father's door every day to remind him she existed, her job as a 1-year-old infant was simply to eat well and grow. Then one day she noticed something was off. Her clingy brother was nowhere to be seen at the dining table. He never, ever missed a moment he could spend with her. She cautiously asked the wet nurse where he had gone. The wet nurse assumed he had just been held up by something and didn't think much of it. But if something had come up, her brother would normally tell her in advance. Was he perhaps still sulking about her insistence on spending time with Father? Though surely he wasn't that petty. She told herself not to worry, then went straight to Father's quarters. She ended up waiting for him so long that she fell asleep. When she drifted back into consciousness, she found Father's handsome face hovering close to hers. She jolted upright and immediately reached out for a hug. But Father just stood there, frozen, unmoving. The head attendant assumed he was simply tired, and gently suggested he go rest. Father dismissed the suggestion. He simply started looking after the girl. The head attendant asked if she had come for some reason. The girl suddenly remembered. She asked if he had seen her brother. When the head attendant said he hadn't seen her brother either that day, the girl began to feel genuinely uneasy. She happened to glance at the clover still sitting in the teacup. Father hadn't thrown it away. That was a good sign. An idea quickly came to her. She turned to Father and suggested carefully that perhaps her brother was ill. And as she hoped, Father's expression shifted. Just slightly. The head attendant added that he didn't know her brother's current situation either. That pushed Father over the edge. "And you call yourself head attendant? This is inexcusable." The head attendant immediately prostrated himself. "The fault is entirely mine. Please, Your Majesty, punish me as you see fit." Ever since the problematic attendants had been removed from the prince's quarters, the prince had consistently rejected every new attendant who came. That very morning, another new attendant had been turned away. As he was explaining, the head attendant caught the girl's meaningful look. He understood at once what she was hinting at. He promptly suggested to the king that perhaps it would be best if he paid a personal visit to the prince's palace. The girl seized the moment and added her own encouragement for father to go. Then the next second, the king shot to his feet, dropped the girl on the table, and rushed off. The girl was furious. "I'm never playing with him again." In the end, she decided to go find her brother on her own. What she didn't know was that the king had been secretly watching her from the shadows all along. His own state right now was no better. In order to avoid the girl, he had come to the very place he least wanted to be. He yanked the cloth off a painting, revealing a portrait of himself and his wife. The happiest time of his life. But ever since that thing happened a year ago, everything had changed. He had lost the woman he loved most. Since then, every day had been an act of penance. He had grown distant from his children, but now, with his son in some kind of trouble, he suddenly felt he could no longer stand by and do nothing. So he immediately ordered the head attendant to send someone to investigate thoroughly. Meanwhile, the girl set off with a basket of food toward her brother's chambers. When she arrived, she found the place unnervingly dark and still. It looked like no one had been living there at all. Her brother had eaten only one sandwich the girl had given him, and it had sent his magic spiraling out of control. To save her brother, the girl resolved to use her own power to suppress his. Not long before, in her search for her missing brother, the girl had decided to explore his palace in the night. When she arrived, she found it eerily dark and lifeless. It looked completely uninhabited. But to find her brother, she pushed her fear aside and went in anyway. Once inside, she snapped her fingers and cast a light spell to illuminate the palace. The eerie silence of the place made her stomach drop with worry. She hoped her brother had been eating and sleeping properly these past few days. When she found him, she was going to make him move in with her. Their group swept through the dining hall, study, and bathroom. Nothing. On top of that, the girl noticed dust everywhere. The management of this place was appalling. Her brother was still a prince of the empire, however people treated him. Furious, she let out a sharp shout. And to her surprise, her brother responded. She flew up to him and demanded to know why it had taken him so long to answer. He, however, was staring at her dirty little hands. He assumed the maids who looked after her must also be mistreating her. The girl quickly pulled her hand back and explained, "Nothing of the sort had happened. The maids treat me very well." Her brother relaxed only after hearing that. Then he took her small hand and cleaned it with his sleeve. The girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a clover she had prepared ahead of time. A gift for him. Her brother immediately took out a handkerchief and wrapped it carefully. "Did you get your hands dirty picking this for me?" "Thank you, little sister. This is the second most precious thing in my life. I'll keep it forever." Watching her brother's delight, the girl was warmed through. The clover's meaning was happiness. She hoped it would bring him just that. But why second most precious? He smiled and told her she was the most precious thing in his life. But the girl quickly caught something wrong behind his smile. "Then why haven't you come to see me all these days?" He tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but she bit down hard on his hand. Finally, he claimed he had simply wanted to train his magic alone. She was even angrier now. She could tell he wasn't being honest. After pressing him again and again, he finally admitted the truth. He had been upset that she had insisted on clinging to father that day. But since she had given him the clover, he was willing to forgive her now. Just then, her brother noticed the sandwiches in her basket. The maids rushed upstairs and excitedly told him all at once that the girl had made them herself. Her brother very much wanted one, but he had just eaten and genuinely couldn't fit anything more. In the end, with the girl pleading and pleading, he reluctantly agreed to at least try a bite. The moment he did, the color drained from his face. The maids assumed he had choked and rushed to hand him water. Only the girl noticed that something felt very wrong about her brother's aura. The next second, her brother swept the wet nurse's hand away and told them all to stay back. Then his strength gave out and he collapsed. The maids immediately moved to call for a doctor. Her brother kept begging them not to come near him and to hurry and take the girl away. That was when the wet nurse realized her brother might be on the verge of a magic surge. The girl came to the same conclusion at the same moment. She immediately broke free of the maid's arms, cast a protective barrier over the three of them, and flew toward her brother. When she reached him, he was still using what little voice he had left to tell her to run, which meant he still had his mind. That was a good sign. Losing one's mind would only make things worse. Then the girl noticed a strange aura encircling her brother. It looked like ice element magic. So her brother had two opposing types of magic inside him all along, No wonder he had never awakened. And the skill she had used to awaken one of those powers had inadvertently triggered a crisis. Seeing her brother in agony, the girl's mind raced with desperation. The system mission triggered again. This time, stabilize her brother's magic. It was strange that every system mission seemed to revolve around herself and her family, but she couldn't dwell on that now. The girl accepted the mission without a second thought. She could not lose her brother again. She activated the PP Boing Boing skill on him again, successfully unlocking his second magical attribute. With both fire and ice properly opened, there would be no more risk of a runaway surge. Just as the girl thought it was all over, the system started throwing errors. This time it seemed like someone was intruding from outside, and the two types of magic inside her brother suddenly activated simultaneously. The situation turned critical in an instant. The girl had no choice but to try suppressing him with her own power. Could she pull it off and save her brother? To save her brother, the girl poured every last drop of her magic into suppressing the surge, and in the end, she nearly lost herself in the process. Fortunately, Father arrived just in time to prevent a tragedy. Not long before, the girl had finally found her brother after days apart, only for him to suddenly go into a magic surge. To put it down, the girl had taken the dangerous gamble of using her own power to hold it back. At that same moment, a bolt of lightning struck somewhere in the distance, and a noblewoman gave birth to a black-haired, red-eyed child. One look at the infant's face filled the woman with disappointment. A child like this could never be her instrument of profit, only a liability. And once the Grand Duke discovered him, the funding would be cut. Still, perhaps the child had some use. After all, she had just heard that the prince and princess had suffered an accident. Just as she was thinking this, the baby in the crib suddenly opened its eyes. Crimson irises shot through with red light. The woman recoiled in shock. She almost doubted whether the child she had just given birth to was even human. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the girl was still fighting to suppress her brother's surging magic. Before long, a system warning appeared. She had pushed her magic to its absolute limit, and her organs were sustaining various degrees of damage. But the girl ignored every warning and kept going, focused entirely on stabilizing her brother. Her brother, still holding a sliver of consciousness, tried to make her let go. What he didn't know was that at this point, she didn't dare. If she let go now, the runaway magic would tear him apart. Clinging to the last thread of her will, the girl finally brought her brother's magic under control. But the cost was her own body now hovering on the edge of a meltdown. Then Father arrived at the last possible moment. Apparently, he had sensed the abnormal magic fluctuations from his study, and leaped straight out the window, then sprinted the entire way to her brother's palace. When he reached the scene, he found the girl on the verge of losing control. He immediately channeled his own power to suppress her. Father's magic was strong enough. In his arms, the girl slowly came back to stillness. Once everything was calm, Father ordered every maid present not to tell the siblings that he had been there, which was why her brother had been so puzzled just now. Father had deliberately hidden his involvement. Fortunately, the maids had all been personally chosen by their mother. They were loyal to both the king and the two children. That was why Father had trusted them to care for the siblings. Now all they needed was rest to recover slowly. He just hadn't anticipated how serious the girl's condition would be. Even after nightly magical treatments, she showed no signs of improvement. He reached out and gently closed his hand around her small fingers, silently willing her to get better. And deep in her blank, drifting consciousness, the girl was fighting hard against the illness. Even when she forgot what her brother looked like, even when she forgot who she was, she didn't give up. Finally, in the afternoon of the next day, the girl slowly opened her eyes. She was groggy at first, but she quickly remembered her name, and remembered her brother's magic going out of control. She sat up urgently to look for him, and her legs buckled beneath her. She toppled back onto the bed. Then she noticed her brother lying beside her. Seeing him safe and whole, the girl couldn't hold back her tears. "You're all right. Thank goodness." To help Father and her brother make peace, the little princess went to great lengths to prepare a lavish family dinner, only for father and son to face off the moment they set eyes on each other. Not long before, both the girl and her brother had woken from their comas. After a period of rest and care, both had recovered reasonably well. To celebrate surviving this ordeal, the girl decided to organize a family dinner. As it happened, Lady Nis had the very same idea, though her reasons were entirely different. She wanted to make an impression on the king. She had arranged for a shipment of rare and precious ingredients to be flown in, hoping to show off her culinary talents. But when she pushed open the kitchen door, she was left speechless. The chefs were already at work in perfect order, and the girl was standing nearby with the wet nurse, supervising. The thought of the upcoming family dinner filled the girl with quiet contentment. It would have been perfect if Mother could have been there too. But wishing for too much felt wrong right now. She should cherish what she had. As she and the wet nurse cheered on the chefs, Lady Niss's sharp voice cut in from across the room. "Ariel, what are you people doing in here?" The girl turned and shot her a hard look. The wet nurse knelt quickly and explained they were preparing a family dinner. Lady Niss immediately turned on her. "Absurd! The princess has only just recovered from a serious injury. How could you let her do something like this? Do you even know your priorities?" The wet nurse apologized at once, but the girl stepped forward and blocked her. "I've recovered fully. There's nothing wrong with doing this." Father's magic was strong enough. In his arms, the girl slowly came back to stillness. Once everything was calm, Father ordered every maid present not to tell the siblings that he had been there, which was why her brother had been so puzzled just now. Father had deliberately hidden his involvement. Fortunately, the maids had all been personally chosen by their mother. They were loyal to both the king and the two children. That was why Father had trusted them to care for the siblings. Now all they needed was rest to recover slowly. He just hadn't anticipated how serious the girl's condition would be. Even after nightly magical treatments, she showed no signs of improvement. He reached out and gently closed his hand around her small fingers, silently willing her to get better. And deep in her blank, drifting consciousness, the girl was fighting hard against the illness. Even when she forgot what her brother looked like, even when she forgot who she was, she didn't give up. Finally, in the afternoon of the next day, the girl slowly opened her eyes. She was groggy at first, but she quickly remembered her name, and remembered her brother's magic going out of control. She sat up urgently to look for him, and her legs buckled beneath her. She toppled back onto the bed. Then she noticed her brother lying beside her. Seeing him safe and whole, the girl couldn't hold back her tears. "You're all right. Thank goodness." To help Father and her brother make peace, the little princess went to great lengths to prepare a lavish family dinner, only for father and son to face off the moment they set eyes on each other. Not long before, both the girl and her brother had woken from their comas. After a period of rest and care, both had recovered reasonably well. To celebrate surviving this ordeal, the girl decided to organize a family dinner. As it happened, Lady Niss had the very same idea, though her reasons were entirely different. She wanted to make an impression on the king. She had arranged for a shipment of rare and precious ingredients to be flown in, hoping to show off her culinary talents. But when she pushed open the kitchen door, she was left speechless. The chefs were already at work in perfect order, and the girl was standing nearby with the wet nurse, supervising. The thought of the upcoming family dinner filled the girl with quiet contentment. It would have been perfect if Mother could have been there too. But wishing for too much felt wrong right now. She should cherish what she had. As she and the wet nurse cheered on the chefs, Lady Niss's sharp voice cut in from across the room. "Ariel, what are you people doing in here?" The girl turned and shot her a hard look. The wet nurse knelt quickly and explained they were preparing a family dinner. Lady Niss immediately turned on her. "Absurd! The princess has only just recovered from a serious injury. How could you let her do something like this? Do you even know your priorities?" The wet nurse apologized at once, but the girl stepped forward and blocked her. "I've recovered fully. There's nothing wrong with doing this." Lady Niss gave a formal bow, and then went on without a shred of mercy. "I had almost convinced myself you might never wake up. Seeing you so full of energy is a great relief." At first, the girl didn't catch the barb hidden beneath those words, but the next thing she said made it unmistakable. "Still, you've only just recovered. It would be best not to cause the king any further worry." Now the girl understood clearly. This woman had come looking for a fight. She made it plain she had no intention of giving up the kitchen. Lady Niss then turned her attack on the wet nurse. "Ariel, how do you manage the princess? Take her back to her quarters at once." The girl's temper snapped. "Don't you dare go after my wet nurse. If you have a problem, bring it to me. Leave her out of it." Every eye in the kitchen swung toward her. Lady Niss, who cared deeply about appearances, had no choice but to offer a reluctant apology and back down. Elsewhere, Father received the girl's dinner invitation, But he still felt he had no right to face his children. He didn't want to go. Then the next second, the girl came barging in and launched herself straight at his face. She had fully anticipated this response and had been lying in wait outside the door. Between her relentless emotional assault and the head attendant's well-timed encouragement, Father finally relented and agreed to come. When they arrived at the dining hall, her brother waved at them eagerly. "Little sister, thank you for inviting me. Come eat." Then he saw that the girl had come with Father. His expression dropped instantly. "Your Majesty, I see you finally found the time." The atmosphere turned ice cold. The little princess, working so hard to reconcile Father and her brother, suddenly discovered that the root of their estrangement was Father's suspected affair, and that their mother had apparently left him because of it. Every dream she'd had of a warm, loving family was shattered in an instant. She didn't know what to do. Not long before, the girl had prepared the family dinner with such hope and anticipation. But the moment her brother saw Father, he started in on him. "Your Majesty, you've finally found the time. All this while you've ignored both me and my sister. Did my awakening magic suddenly make it worth pretending to care about me?" Watching her brother escalate, the girl rushed to intervene. "Please don't speak to Father that way. Brother, if you keep this up, I'll be upset." Her brother suddenly let out a long sigh. "Little sister, you don't know anything." Then he crashed through the window and jumped. Was leaping out of windows some kind of family tradition? Why did everyone around her keep doing it? She stared at her brother's receding figure, completely at a loss. She still had no idea what had happened between Father and him. Neither of them wanted to tell her. And sure enough, Father made an excuse and left too. No matter how she tried to stop him, it made no difference. He left with only 2 words, "I'm sorry," and walked away. After they were both gone, the girl was still dwelling on what had happened. In their previous life, the family had been so close. How had things come to this? What on earth had happened between Father and her brother? The girl couldn't help pulling up her system window, hoping to find some useful mission notification. Of course, there was nothing. And within a few taps, it started throwing errors again. She was done with this useless system. Maybe she should just give up entirely. Just as she was thinking that, the system suddenly prompted her to check her skill tree. She opened it immediately. And to her surprise, she had unlocked a new A-rank skill that could read another person's memories. She knew perfectly well that peeking into someone's memories without permission was wrong, but right now it was the only way to break through this wall. So she immediately called for the wet nurse, and they set off together to her brother's chambers. Her brother was sitting alone, quietly miserable. The moment he heard the girl had come, he apologized to her right away. "I'm sorry about what happened earlier, little sister. And after you worked so hard to prepare that meal for us." The girl told him she didn't mind. Then she asked the wet nurse to step outside. She turned to her brother with a serious expression and asked, point blank, what had happened between him and Father. As expected, he refused to tell her, same as always. In that case, she had no choice but to use the skill. She felt a little guilty doing it to her brother, but this was for the sake of the whole family. The next second, she closed one eye and focused the open one on him. The skill activated, and she slipped into her brother's inner world. His inner world was far darker than she had imagined. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice. It was a memory from before she was born, her brother and their mother. Finally seeing her mother alive, the girl was overwhelmed with emotion and couldn't hold back her tears. But that wasn't the point right now. She needed to find the source of the rift between Father and her brother. Then she heard Father and Mother arguing. Mother was furious, accusing Father of betraying her while she was pregnant. Father offered no explanation. He only kept saying he was sorry. In the end, it came to a divorce. And her brother, standing just outside the door, heard every word. Just as the girl took this in, her consciousness was yanked back to reality by her brother. "Little sister, are you all right? You just went blank for a moment and stopped responding? You scared me." Still reeling from what she had just learned, the girl quickly pulled free of her brother, said a hasty goodbye, and left. From what she had seen, Father appeared to have had another woman. What exactly had happened? To find out whether Father had truly betrayed their family, the girl quietly used her mind-reading skill on him. But she found she couldn't access his deeper memories. What she could catch, unexpectedly, was the stream of his thoughts. And it turned out he still genuinely loved both her and her brother. Not long before, the girl had learned the truth behind father and her brother's estrangement from her brother's memories. Father was suspected of having been with another woman. It was completely out of character for him. In her previous life, father had loved mother more than anything. The thought made the room spin. Fortunately, her brother caught her before she fell. "Are you all right, little sister? Did His Majesty say something to you after I left?" The girl brushed it off. "Nothing like that. I'm just a little tired." Her brother immediately grew worried. "You're right, you've only just recovered. Are you pushing yourself too hard? If something is wrong, you have to tell me right away, because you are the most precious person in the world to me." The girl promised she would. Though she knew there was no point asking her brother about father's alleged affair, he would never tell her the details. So she went to find father herself, intending to use the mind-reading skill to get to the truth. But when she activated the skill on father, it returned an error. After several failed attempts, just when she was wondering if the system had malfunctioned again, a pop-up appeared. It was showing her father's internal monologue. He was thinking about how adorable she was. It seemed the skill couldn't reach father's deep memories, but it could pick up his stream of thoughts. And just from those thoughts, she could tell clearly that father still loved both of them. So she immediately turned on all her charm and climbed right into his lap. Watching her be so adorable, father couldn't help but reach out and stroke her hair. Feeling his gentleness, the girl was now certain her brother had misunderstood something. How could a father who loved them this much ever do something like that? She looked up at him earnestly. "Father, I know. You were the one who saved me and brother. Because you love us deeply." Father froze, clearly not expecting her to say that. The tips of his ears went faintly red. Mother had once told her that whenever father felt embarrassed, his ears would flush. So she had guessed right. But father seemed to be carrying something he couldn't say. He murmured that someone like him had no right to love them. Just as the girl was turning that over in her mind, Uncle Yuming appeared to deliver a report. The moment he saw the girl there, he lit up completely and immediately lunged toward her for a hug. The girl, whose conversation had just been interrupted, was not pleased at all and wanted nothing to do with him. That hurt Uncle Yuming deeply. He had even shaved specially for her. His persistent fussing irritated father too. You can't credit the princess for something you chose to do for your own reasons. Seeing father and daughter united against him, Uncle Yuming burst into theatrical tears on the spot. The girl found his over-the-top performance too absurd to dignify with a response. She simply turned back to father and continued being sweet with him. But when father saw her acting like that, his face fell. "Don't you resent me? It's my fault you and your brother lost your mother at such a young age." After a long silence, father had finally opened up to her. The mission to win over father was at last complete. Father and daughter held each other tightly, both afraid of losing someone precious again. Not long before, father had admitted to the girl that he considered himself a sinner, responsible for taking their mother away from them when they were so small. He had believed all this time that he had no right to be close to them. Hearing this, the girl broke down in tears. "Is that why you've been treating us that way all along? That's terrible, you don't actually hate us at all." Seeing her cry harder and harder, father quickly pulled her into his arms. But her tears wouldn't stop. "I love spending time with you, father, but I hate the version of you who pretended not to care about us. We found each other again. Do you know how hard that was?" In her previous life, father's death had been a devastating blow to the whole family. They had endured their grief and held a funeral with no body to bury. That was why, when they were reunited in this life, the girl had been so overwhelmed. But father had been cold to her all along, and that had truly hurt. Seeing her so distraught, father quickly drew her close. He had no idea how to comfort a sobbing little girl. Hearing her cry so brokenly made his own eyes burn. All he could do was say, "I'm sorry," again and again. Then the long-absent system chimed. "Win over father mission complete. New branch mission unlocked. Grow closer to father." Meanwhile, after learning that all three of them had quarreled, Lady Nis hurried to her brother's quarters to stir up more trouble. This was the perfect moment to drive a deeper wedge between them. As she approached the door, she overheard her brother telling General Bush to leave. Though General Bush kept insisting father had sent him there to protect the prince, her brother refused to believe it. Years of neglect, combined with the situation surrounding their mother, had killed every last shred of trust he had in father. He simply wanted General Bush gone. Lady Nis found this amusing. Father sending General Bush was essentially an acknowledgement that her brother was the heir, and the boy was turning him away. This worked perfectly in her favor. She pushed open the door and told General Bush to make himself scarce. Hanging around like this? Are you trying to stage a rebellion? Her brother then noticed the garment she was wearing. It had belonged to their mother. The next second, magic energy began to gather around him. He glared at Lady Nis and demanded to know why she was wearing their mother's clothing. She had better think carefully before she answered, he told her. Otherwise, he couldn't be held responsible for what he might do to someone who stole from his mother. The color drained from Lady Nis's face. She dropped to her knees immediately. I've been wronged! Your Highness, the Queen gave this to me herself. She said it was a final gift. After that answer, her brother relaxed and told them both to get out. But Lady Nis refused to leave. She seemed to think he was a naive child, easy to manipulate. Your Highness, the Queen earnestly asked me to take good care of you. Her brother stiffened. Only me, not my sister? Lady Nis, sensing an opening, smiled warmly. Of course. The Queen only ever loved you. Going forward, I will love and care for you in the Queen's place, even better than the King ever could. But before the words had barely left her mouth, her brother shoved her back. You liar! How dare you claim my mother didn't love my sister? And you're using mother's name to tell lies. I don't need anyone looking after me. Having my sister is enough. The moment he finished saying it, he looked up and saw the girl standing in the doorway, stifling a grin. To help her brother and father finally make peace, the girl arranged for the two of them to be locked in a room together. What she hadn't expected was discovering, quite by accident, that both of them were completely off the charts in their affection for her. The sudden revelation made her face burn red. Not long before, Lady Nis had deliberately tried to sow discord in front of her brother. She hadn't counted on her brother shoving her aside, and he had announced loudly that having his little sister was all he would ever need. He hadn't expected the girl herself to be standing right there at that moment, having heard every word. Her brother's face turned bright crimson. Before the girl could even react, he leapt out the window and fled. Again. Why did everyone keep doing that? The moment her brother was gone, Lady Nis on the floor began wailing dramatically. She had been a full 5 meters away just moments before, and now she had somehow migrated to father's feet. Your Majesty, the prince did raise his voice at me, but I'm quite all right. The girl watched Lady Nis's performance with barely concealed disdain. She had been pushed by a 7-year-old. The theatrics were entirely unnecessary. When the girl clicked her tongue, the maids immediately erupted. Oh, even the way the princess clicks her tongue is adorable. The girl turned red from embarrassment. She just wanted to grow up faster. But someone like Lady Nis didn't even deserve her attention. She simply turned to Father and started chatting. Father, you were so shy just now. Father looked pained. More importantly, I think your brother ran because he dislikes me. I'll look for another opportunity to open up to him. The girl was immediately anxious. But I want you and brother to get along properly. Father saw the hope on her face and without a word scooped her up and leaped from the windowsill. The servants nearly had heart attacks. They scrambled after them in a panic. The knights who stayed behind dealt efficiently with Lady Nis. She was left completely baffled as to where her plan had gone wrong. Meanwhile, Father and the girl had landed and caught up with her brother. Her brother struggled and resisted the whole way, but they firmly brought him to a room. The moment he was set down, he tried to bolt, only to be stopped by the magic barrier the girl had set up in advance. The girl said there were things she needed to say to him. Her brother had absolutely no interest in hearing them. With no other option, the girl fell back on her old trick. If you're this desperate to run away from me, brother, does that mean you don't love me anymore? He waved his hands frantically. Of course I love you. How could I not? The girl happily grabbed his hand. Then you're not going to run? After he promised 3 times over that he wouldn't run, the girl smiled. Her plan was back on track. With that, they brought out an assortment of cakes and pastries and sat down for the first afternoon tea among the 3 of them. But both Father and her brother sat in stony silence, not a word between them. The girl was exasperated. She opened the system and looked up the affection readings. What she found left her completely floored. Both of them were showing maximum affection levels for her. Seeing how thoroughly wrapped up they were in concern for her, the girl felt her face catch fire. Through the girl's persistent efforts, Father and her brother finally made peace. And the girl also began to suspect something peculiar about the system itself. It seemed like someone she knew might be behind it. Not long before, while working to reconcile father and her brother, the girl had used the affection check skill. She had stumbled on the fact that both father and her brother were maxed out in their affection for her. But for now, their feelings toward each other were what mattered, not their feelings toward her. She quickly took a peek. Father's affection for her brother was already at maximum. Her brother's affection for father, however, was at only one bar. Father would clearly have to do most of the work. Father, what do you want to say to brother? Say it now. Father was already trying to back out. I do want to talk to your brother properly, but I still feel I have no right. The girl immediately took his face in both her hands. Don't overthink it. Just say what's in your heart. Those were exactly the words her father had said to her in their previous life. Whenever she had argued with friends as a child, he would sit with her patiently and guide her through it. Sina, if you don't speak up, your heart won't be heard. Even when you're truly sorry, you have to say it out loud. Otherwise, the wall between you will never come down. Remembering that, the girl patted father's shoulder. You can do this, father. I believe in you. Encouraged by her, father finally found the courage to approach her brother. He gently placed a hand on his arm. I'm sorry, Leon, for what happened with your mother. And for abandoning you and your sister when you were so young. I am deeply sorry. By the time he finished, her brother's eyes were brimming with tears. Father reached up and gently brushed them away. The truth is, I stayed away from you all this time because I believed I had no right to love you. But your sister told me that was wrong. Her brother choked out the words, So you want me to forgive you? But father shook his head. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I only wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Her brother grabbed him and broke down sobbing. You idiot. Do you have any idea how much I suffered all those years? Seeing father and son holding each other and crying, the girl's own eyes filled too. She flew toward them without hesitation. In this life, she was going to protect the people she loved, no matter what. After successfully getting father and her brother back together, the girl walked around beaming and laughing to herself every single day. That happiness, without anyone noticing, began to spread to the maids as well. Then one day, a mission completion notification arrived from the system. Congratulations, host. Mission complete. May you keep the promise you made. The girl found the unusually personal phrasing strange. In truth, this wasn't the first time the system had spoken this way. Back when she was dying in her previous life, the system had popped up with something about whether she disliked it. Oddly enough, she had no memory of ever saying that to it. A system shouldn't have a personality, yet something seemed to have changed in it since her reincarnation. On reflection, it had consistently given her missions that helped her, or helped her grow. Just as she was starting to investigate, the system started crashing again. She gave up. Whether it was friend or foe, she would not allow it to hurt her family again. Father and her brother came to see her just then. Since completing the mission, the two of them had been growing closer day by day. Thinking about the mission, she suddenly realized she had forgotten something. She didn't seem to have received her reward for this one yet. Father and her brother had no idea. Her brother was fantasizing about pinching her cheeks, soft as cotton candy. If father hadn't intervened, he probably would have actually done it. As it was, only she ended up getting hurt. She had never imagined she would be stood up by her own system. At that same moment in the Duchy of Nazca, a black-haired young man in ornate clothing was lying on a magical altar. An elderly man nearby called out to him through tearful eyes, Your Highness! The young man only slowly opened his golden eyes. He murmured something. This time I will surely, then closed them again. After successfully reconciling father and her brother, the three of them were finally able to spend some genuinely happy time together. And at last, 2 years later, they struck back against the Grand Duke's family. During those 2 years, father and her brother had spent a great deal of time with her. They had even commissioned a special magical fairy costume just for her. As someone who was mentally an adult on the inside, she found it all a little childish. But the outfit was so soft and pink that she simply couldn't bring herself to say no. She put it on and played along, reducing both father and her brother to helpless adoration. On top of that, her brother was always hunting for new toys for her. He had come that day carrying a dollhouse, certain that the princess doll inside looked exactly like her. He hadn't been able to wait to bring it over and show her. When the girl saw it, she gave it a brief, "It's cute," and nothing more. That immediately made her brother anxious. What if she didn't like it? She picked up one of the dolls and invited him to play. She chose the princess and demon king figurines. Her brother chose the prince. Watching them play so happily together, the wet nurse felt a deep warmth. Then a maid softly called from the doorway. The girl's instincts immediately went on alert. Curious what they were whispering about, she went still and listened. Outside, the maid pulled the wet nurse aside and began telling her about a rumor that had been spreading recently. Someone had been going around claiming that her brother had lost his magic after the surge incident, and that the girl had reverted to her old helpless state. The rumor also claimed that upon learning this, father had decided to abandon the two siblings and adopt the Grand Duke Balon's son and daughter instead. The girl clenched her fist, the nerve of them. But it was probably because the family had been out of the public eye for so long. After sorting out the misunderstanding, they had treasured every moment together, and it had apparently given those with bad intentions the opening to twist the narrative. Her brother, who had also been quietly eavesdropping, leaned over and whispered to ask what they should do. The girl made a gesture. They were going to hit back hard. Otherwise, these people would think the family was easy prey. The very next day, father hosted a banquet and invited the nobility. When the guests spotted the Grand Duchess, they crowded around her. "Your Grace, it's been so long since we've seen you at the palace, and you've brought your son and daughter. Your children are such a dashing pair. Truly, only they have what it takes to carry the Empire's future." As the Grand Duchess soaked in the flattery, she swelled with satisfaction. Exactly right. Her children were the proper heirs. Unlike that pitiful pair of siblings who had supposedly lost even their magic. She gave a meaningful look to the Marchioness of Rose, then swept into the hall with her children. The banquet hall was already packed. This was the king's first major event in 2 years. Everyone had come for the spectacle. They wanted to know, would the king actually make the Grand Duke Balon's children his heirs? As the crowd buzzed with speculation, father entered with the girl and her brother. The sight of her brother, completely unharmed, left many guests stunned. By all conventional wisdom, anyone who had survived a magic surge should have been beyond recovery. Her brother spotted Achilles in the crowd and silently mouthed pants wetter at him. Achilles was furious. Meanwhile, the girl in father's arms had also drawn everyone's attention. That angelic, radiant face made it very difficult to believe she was anything less than sharp and capable. And her brother looked nothing like someone who had lost his magic. Seeing how attentively father treated them both, it was clear he had not abandoned them as the rumors claimed. Though the Grand Duchess had already begun to feel a flicker of unease, she still held firm to her belief that the girl had reverted. And surely a king who loved his children so tenderly would welcome her own children. She exchanged another glance with the Marchioness of Rose. The Marchioness stepped up to father directly. "Your Majesty, please permit me as a loyal subject to humbly offer a suggestion. I urge you to name the Grand Duke Balon's son and daughter as your heirs. Only then will the people be at ease." Hidden beneath father's cloak, the girl allowed herself a quiet, satisfied smile. Everything was going exactly as she had planned. After 2 years, the girl had finally teamed up with father and her brother to bring the Grand Duke's family down. From that day on, the rumors of her and her brother being worthless were laid to rest for good. And the family was on the brink of a bright and happy future. Not long before, at the Grand Duchess's urging, the Marchioness of Rose had stepped forward to address the king, asking him to name the Grand Duke Balon's children as his heirs. The suggestion immediately set the crowd murmuring. Even if it was a reasonable proposition, doing it directly in front of the girl and her brother was beyond brazen. But the girl tucked inside father's cloak was quietly delighted. The Grand Duchess had taken the bait. Now she was going to make them pay for it. What no one expected was that father went completely off script. He turned to the Marchioness with a dark expression. "I don't understand what you're saying. Both the prince and princess have caused the sunstone to light up. On what grounds are they unfit to be heirs?" The moment father finished speaking, everyone in the hall felt a wave of invisible pressure. The Knight Commander watched the offenders being dealt with, quietly shaking his head. These people had grown too comfortable. They had forgotten how the king had fought his way to the throne. He had single-handedly eliminated 5 rivals in the succession war, and had personally executed the half-brother who attempted a coup. Meeting the queen had softened him, and losing her had left him seemingly without desires. But at his core, he was still the terrifying man they had all once feared. So those who dared to poke that nerve were practically asking to die. The girl also sensed that Father's emotions were slipping out of control. She grabbed his sleeve and held him back. Seeing Father regain his composure, the Grand Duchess stepped forward shakily to smooth things over. "Your Majesty, how can you treat a loyal subject who dared to speak plainly like this? Someone attend to her!" At the command, people rushed to escort the Marchioness away. After examination by a physician, she was found to have suffered severe psychological shock. She would need months of rest. The girl was quietly frustrated. If Father hadn't lost his temper so quickly, she could have used the opening to make the Grand Duchess and Achilles suffer far more. Seeing his precious daughter's little pouty expression, Father immediately apologized. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, it wasn't intentional." Watching Father grovel before the girl, Achilles snapped, "Why does that worthless prince get to stay the heir, but I can't? Your Majesty, you told me I would become the prince." The Grand Duchess's stomach dropped when she saw her son speak. "I apologize, Your Majesty. Achilles is still a child. He doesn't know when to hold his tongue. Please forgive him." Her plea only made Achilles more furious. "What do you mean, I don't know? Mother, everyone said I was going to be the prince." Her brother couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. "If the prince were someone like you, the sun god himself would despair." Achilles bristled. "What gives a worthless waste who lost his magic the right to insult me? Everyone heard about your magic surge 2 years ago. No member of the royal family who has ever caused a surge has ever recovered their power, not one." The Grand Duchess backed her son up. "Everyone knows the prince suffered a magic surge, and the princess reportedly has been somewhat confused following her fever." Her brother found the mother and son routine almost funny. "Never mind me and my sister for a moment. Even if you did inherit the throne, would the nation's future actually look any brighter?" Achilles was left completely speechless. He stepped forward, about to use his magic on her brother. But then a white glow suddenly rose from her brother's hand, and when the two forces clashed, her brother was clearly the stronger of the two. He looked down coldly at Achilles, who lay in a sorry state on the floor. Then he quietly removed his foot from the boy's chest. Everyone present finally understood. The story of her brother losing his magic was a complete fabrication. Having dealt with Achilles, her brother immediately trotted over to the girl, eager for praise. "I did great, didn't I, little sister?" She shot him a withering look. "Great, you complete idiot." Father and her brother, rather than being upset, were both hit with fond nostalgia at the sight of her scolding them, which only made the girl more exasperated. But their warm family moment was watched by everyone in the room, and people couldn't help murmuring about how adorable the girl was. Father, overhearing this, puffed up with quiet pride. Everyone would know how wonderful his daughter was. Her brother lifted his chin with barely concealed smugness. After all the drama, everyone now knew the rumors about the two siblings had been entirely false. The Grand Duchess's family was almost certainly behind it, and her reputation was in ruins. The girl had brought her down without lifting a finger. Still, Father and her brother's sudden clinginess was deeply uncomfortable for her. It was embarrassing. Because the girl looked so utterly enchanting in her little fairy costume, Father went out and bought every single magic wand in the entire empire to lay at her feet. But rather than being delighted, the girl threw a tantrum. Not long before, the family had thoroughly dealt with the Grand Duke's household. A long overdue peaceful period had finally arrived. But ever since seeing the girl in that fairy outfit, Father had gone into a kind of frenzy, scouring everywhere for magic wands of every description. The girl was deeply unsatisfied. Despite being a child on the outside, she was a full adult on the inside. She could not accept such an absurdly childish gift. Of course, in this life, Father was no different from how he had been before. In her previous life, too, he had played the magic hunter game with her endlessly when she was small, never tiring of it. And in this life, he was obsessed with buying her magic wands. There was just no reasoning with him when it came to his daughter. Then, the very next second, Father and her brother appeared in the doorway, and the system started acting up again, throwing error after error, and it startled her badly. Father and her brother saw her reaction and rushed straight over. Then they turned on the servants with their most intimidating glares. "Who dared upset my daughter? Whoever it is will answer to me." "Someone go and fetch the knights." The girl was baffled by the sheer scale of their overreaction. She quickly grabbed both of them by the sleeve. "Father, brother, I give up on the two of you. Can you please stop going around with those frightening expressions all the time? Seeing their little girl all puffed up with exasperation, father and her brother both went completely to pieces. They immediately transformed into helpless puppies, begging her to forgive them. They also announced they had brought her gifts. When 3 large boxes were carried in, the girl looked on with some curiosity. After opening all of them, her expression curdled. They had given her yet another pile of magic wands. She had told them that she was not a child anymore. Why did they keep treating her like one? It was exhausting. Who could have imagined that at such a young age she would amass an unlimited personal supply of magic wands? But father and her brother were clearly so pleased with themselves that she couldn't quite bring herself to refuse. Then she finally remembered the crashing system. She opened the interface and checked. It had recovered, and it owed her a mission reward. That brightened her mood instantly, and she forgave it its earlier nonsense. The reward this time, combining 2 completed missions, turned out to be a skill upgrade voucher. She immediately applied it to her mind-reading skill. It jumped from A rank to S rank. At the higher level, the mind reading came with a bonus effect, a 10% chance to passively pick up anyone's inner voice at any time. She quietly tested it on the maids right away, not a single success. She punched her pillow in frustration. She should have known. The wretched system was still as useless as ever. Even S rank, and it was this unreliable. She flopped onto her bed in defeat. Then, out of nowhere, her thoughts drifted back to the Demon King from her previous life. All the family she had known were appearing in this world, one by one. Was it possible that others from her previous life had reincarnated here too? Could the Demon King have as well? She was deep in thought when her brother interrupted her. "Little sister, are you in a bad mood?" Seeing him, she decided to stop brooding. At least in this life, her family was all right. Except for mother. And if the Demon King really had reincarnated here, she would make sure he suffered for it. Just then, she noticed the clover brooch on her brother's chest. He had preserved it with magic, and he told her it was his most precious treasure. Father had one too, the exact same brooch. The girl was deeply moved. She had never imagined that a clover she had picked on a whim would become something they both treasured so dearly. Elsewhere, Grand Duke Balon was furious. The daughter of Count Horden had deceived him. The child she had given birth to appeared to be simple-minded. The woman grabbed his trouser leg desperately and begged him to listen. Her child was not simple-minded at all. She pleaded with the Grand Duke to take a closer look at the girl. He glanced at the child, made and noticed something immediately off about her. A strange dark aura seemed to drift around the girl. Something about her entire being felt indescribably eerie. It left the Grand Duke unsettled. The woman, seeing his reaction, begged him not to cut off their financial support. But the black-haired, red-eyed girl paid no attention to the 2 adults and their squabbling. She frowned in the direction of the palace. "It seems you haven't given up yet. Go ahead and live your happy life, Sina. And also..." Here, the girl stopped. She could not let slip the name of someone she shouldn't know. To become the queen as quickly as possible, Lady Nis had deliberately sent her niece to serve in the girl's palace. Her original plan had been for her niece to control the girl. But instead, her niece had been completely won over by the girl, and now happily managed her collection of magic wands. Not long before, the girl had successfully upgraded her mind-reading skill using the upgrade voucher. But the bonus 10% effect had done essentially nothing on anyone. Until that woman arrived. One day, the girl was idly staring out the window with nothing much on her mind. An orange-haired maid came in and introduced herself with great flair. "Hello, everyone. My name is Marlinda, and I am your new head maid." Seeing a new face, the girl immediately knew a new mission was coming. Sure enough, the mission window popped up. Emergency mission. Charm my spy. Hearing the word spy, the girl went on immediate alert. Cross-referencing Marlinda's surname, she quickly connected her to Lady Nis, the woman who had been trying to tear her family apart. This Marlinda was clearly her plant. After being disciplined last time, the girl had expected her to lay low for a while. Apparently not. And she had the nerve to install her niece as head maid, the highest-ranking position in the girl's palace. Marlinda appeared to think her aunt's name was enough protection. "Surely you wouldn't refuse an order from my aunt. She is the vice-head attendant of the Queen's palace." The girl immediately said she had everything she needed with the people she already had. She had no use for a new maid. The maids were moved to tears, and her brother's eyes lit up. "Really, little sister? That's truly how you feel." Still, Marlinda had arrived with an official transfer order. They couldn't simply ignore it. So the girl winked at her and said hello. The next second, all of Marlinda's basic information appeared before her. And on top of that, the interaction seemed to accidentally trigger the bonus effect. Marlinda's inner voice surfaced. It turned out she had been completely disarmed by the girl's wink. She found it adorable. But she was fighting hard not to let herself be swayed. Her brother noticed Marlinda's distant manner and was displeased. "You dare ignore my sister's greeting? Clearly the standards in the Queen's palace are not very high." The other maids eagerly backed him up. "Absolutely right, Your Highness." To stay unmoved by such a sweet greeting, it speaks to a lack of sensitivity. Her brother also began to suspect Marlinda's motives. "Are you harboring some inappropriate agenda toward the princess? Is that why you've infiltrated this place?" Marlinda, having her true feelings called out with such precision, froze and had no idea how to respond. Then the girl suddenly launched herself at her. She grabbed Marlinda's hands and smiled up at her. "Marlinda, stay here and keep me company." That one adorable gesture captured Marlinda's heart entirely. She was utterly lost. As expected, someone as guileless as Marlinda had no talent for espionage whatsoever. The system promptly issued a new mission. If she could make Marlinda defect of her own free will, she would receive an S-rank item. For that reward, the girl resolved to win Marlinda over no matter what. After that, Marlinda was assigned to oversee the magic wand storage. She was reluctant at first. After all, she still had her aunt's assignment to carry out. Her aunt had sent her to infiltrate the princess's palace, gather intelligence, and then find a way to take control of the palace. That was the path to power for both of them. She would then become the niece of the queen. Instead, she had been reduced to polishing magic wands every day. This was completely absurd. How was she supposed to explain this to her aunt? Despite all that, Marlinda adapted to managing the magic wand storage quickly, and actually started to enjoy it. Even the report she sent to her aunt began gushing about how much she loved her new role. Lady Nis was beside herself. She had thought her dim-witted niece would be easy to control. She had planted a trap for herself instead. At least the girl didn't know much. Lady Nis decided to cut her losses. But ever since her brother had purged every spy from the prince's quarters, the head attendant had been screening servants with extreme scrutiny. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before she herself was pushed out entirely, and her one foothold in the girl's palace, her niece, was utterly useless. What was she going to do now? On the other side, her brother carefully inspected the newly delivered magic wands and gave Marlinda glowing praise. Marlinda, in turn, was deeply satisfied that the girl could play with the wands safely. After all, she had polished each one 33 times. Though she couldn't help privately lamenting her aunt's lack of appreciation, protecting the princess's adorable smile was such a meaningful thing to be doing. And yet her aunt kept saying she didn't need to report irrelevant details. She also wondered if her aunt was still secretly wearing the queen's clothing. At this point, she had completely lost track of why she had been sent here in the first place. And all those private thoughts were being picked up by the girl without her even realizing, since the skills bonus effect had no usage limit. The girl had spent this period getting to know Marlinda thoroughly. As a result, the mission to win her over was completed in just half a month. Just as she was about to claim her reward, the system popped up with a new mission. This time it was, protect father's virtue. Apparently, the relentless Lady Nis had decided to set her sights on becoming queen through yet another scheme. She had figured that woman was unkillable. And now she was going after father? This time she was going to drive her out of the palace for good. She was merely a vice-head attendant. Yet she had the audacity to dream of replacing the queen. Father could no longer stomach watching her defile the memory of his beloved wife. He needed to deal with this woman once and for all. Not long before, the girl had successfully won over Marlinda, Lady Nis's spy. Then, the very next moment, the system informed her that Lady Nis had been plotting to replace her mother and become queen. To protect father, the girl was prepared to fight Lady Nis to the bitter end. That afternoon, the girl was having tea with father and her brother. They called it tea and conversation. But in practice, father and her brother were relentlessly hand-feeding the girl. Father pushed a piece of pastry into her mouth and carefully wiped the corner of her lips. Her brother slid a prepared cup of tea in front of her. After eating and drinking her fill, a thought suddenly came to her. She raised her hand and addressed father. "Father, there's something I'd like to do." Father and her brother immediately told her to name it. Even if she wanted to pluck the stars from the sky, they would find a way. But all she said was that she would like to visit Mother's room. Father listened and smiled quietly, a weight lifting from his expression. Father should have taken you there long ago. There was never quite the right moment. The next second, he scooped her up, then reached out a hand to her brother. Shall we go together then, Leon? Let's go. Seeing the three of them so warm and at ease with each other, the wet nurse's eyes welled up with tears. She had waited so long for this day. For a very long time, mentioning the queen had been forbidden in the palace. The girl had changed all of that. She believed this family would only grow happier from here on. Meanwhile, on the other side of the palace, Lady Nis had no idea what was happening. She was blissfully trying on the queen's crown in private. As I thought, this crown suits me best of all. Things will work out this time as well. After all, I've succeeded once before. Though the Grand Duke had given the opportunity to another woman back then. Everything will be mine. Just as Lady Nis was deep in her queenly fantasies, the door swung open. The girl's entire family stood in the doorway. Lady Nis saw Father and went pale. Father calmly handed the girl to her brother. Then he turned his darkened gaze on Lady Nis. You dared to wear the queen's clothing. The moment the words left his mouth, a bolt of magical force grazed past Lady Nis and struck the wall behind her. She stumbled and fell to the floor in shock. Father then ordered someone to carefully remove the queen's garments from her. He turned a cold eye toward the maids kneeling nearby. Was this why you kept blocking the door to this room? The maids trembled in terror. Your Majesty, we truly did not know. We assumed Lady Nis was simply organizing Her Majesty's belongings. Then Lady Nis, about to be stripped of the garments, began to shriek, How dare you treat your mistress this way? Father nearly laughed despite his fury. I was unaware that a mere vice head attendant had become mistress of the Queen's palace. Lady Nis scrambled to explain. No, that's not it. Your Majesty, these things were all given to me by the Queen herself. Her brother's patience snapped. This woman never stops talking. We should have dealt with her long ago. He immediately cast a binding spell on Lady Nis. With her held still, the maids were finally able to remove the Queen's jewelry. Father took the crown back first. This crown has been passed down through the imperial line to every queen. And you dared put it on your head so casually. Furthermore, that gown you're wearing, it was the Queen's wedding dress. And you expect me to believe she gave all of this to you? Lady Nis suddenly became emotional. But Your Majesty, the Queen herself asked me to look after the children. Now that she's gone, you should make me queen. The girl nearly lost her mind with rage. Her mother had been so kind to this woman, and she had spent all this time trying to take her place. Then a red system pop-up appeared. Side effect triggered. X-ray vision item. Using the X-ray vision to monitor within 300 meters of a specific location for over 5 minutes may randomly trigger side effects such as dry eye or rhinitis. The next second, the girl's eyes began streaming with involuntary tears. The dry eye side effect had triggered. Simply because the girl had mentioned she liked gold. Father and her brother were now falling over each other trying to give her gold mines. The only condition, they each wanted a kiss in return. The girl was completely at a loss for words. These two ridiculous people were going to be the death of her. Not long before, they had caught Lady Nis red-handed wearing the Queen's clothing. Just as they were about to deal with her, the system had flagged that the X-ray vision item had triggered a dry eye side effect. The next second, the girl couldn't stop her eyes from streaming. Without any eye drops available, she had no choice but to keep rubbing her eyes. From everyone else's perspective, this created a massive misunderstanding. First, Marlinda was suddenly overcome with guilt. After all, the girl was in this state because of her aunt. Then Father and her brother rushed to her side and began comforting her frantically. And the maids all turned their fiercest glares on Lady Nis. Lady Nis was frightened half to death. Then Marlinda suddenly dropped to her knees. Your Majesty, please let me be punished alongside my aunt. Over the past 4 years, my aunt has freely used the Queen's belongings and even transferred the Queen's palace budget and valuables into her own name. You only need to check the assets registered under my name. She used other relatives as fronts. The girl listened thoughtfully. She had actually known all of this for some time. The moment she had been able to hear Marlinda's inner voice, she had sent the head attendant to gather evidence. Seeing the head attendant step forward with the evidence right on cue, Father looked puzzled. Did you know about this long ago? The head attendant quickly clarified, "Not at all, Your Majesty." The princess noticed that Lady Nice's garments were unusually extravagant and grew suspicious. She instructed me to investigate. I deeply regret not discovering this sooner. Marlinda burst into tears upon hearing this. As expected of the princess, you already knew. You must have been waiting for me to come forward on my own. I don't know how to face you. Father and her brother both praised the girl's sharp mind extravagantly, which gave her quite the inflated ego for some time afterward. Father then ordered Lady Nice dragged out and executed and all her assets confiscated. Lady Nice screamed and begged for mercy. Just as the girl thought everything was finally wrapping up, the system issued a new mission. It wanted her to save Lady Nice. Did this woman still have some use later? Letting her off was a nuisance, but going against the system mission probably wasn't wise either. And when the system saw she wasn't responding, it offered an interim compensation reward for the emergency mission. That finally swayed her. She had to swallow her pride and ask Father not to have Lady Nice killed. And Father, hopelessly devoted to his daughter, couldn't bring himself to refuse her. Lady Nice was stunned that the girl had pleaded for her life. But on reflection, it made sense. The child was still so small, she must see her as some kind of mother figure. Then she saw the cold smile on the girl's face, and understood in an instant that she had been played. She raged at the girl, calling her a little devil. Her brother looked ready to cut her down on the spot. But the girl had asked for mercy. Still, Father made sure to punish her thoroughly. After Lady Nice was dragged away, it was Marlinda's turn. She was technically an accomplice, but she had come forward voluntarily and provided evidence. The girl decided to grant her a special pardon. However, Marlinda could no longer remain in the palace. Marlinda couldn't believe the girl was being this kind to her. She expressed her gratitude over and over, then walked out of the palace with her head held high. Watching the girl show such generosity moved the maids to tears, but also made them worry whether someone this kind could survive in a world this cruel. The girl found the whole thing exhausting. She was just tired. Before she knew it, the girl was nearly 7 years old. One day, she dreamed of a memory involving the Demon King from her previous life. Back when he was still in human form, he had confessed his feelings for her with deep sincerity. The girl had been annoyed by the confession. It felt like last words. The Demon King had laughed helplessly at her reaction and said he would confess again properly after she captured the Demon King. At the time, he had genuinely looked forward to a future with her. He just hadn't known how it would all end. The thought jolted her awake. She then received a strange new mission from the system. The objective: eliminate a traitor. Was this traitor going to be the Demon King again? She would not let him off so easily this time. Having slept poorly, the girl arrived at the breakfast table yawning. She was distracted throughout the meal, which worried Father. But she kept insisting she was fine, and Father let it go. He brought up her upcoming 7th birthday instead, proposing to gift her a castle named after her. Her brother wanted to plate it in solid gold. The girl stared at them both. Were these two for real? They had pulled similar stunts before, of course. But why would you clad a castle in gold? It was then that she realized why her brother could throw money around so freely. As the Empire's sole prince, he owned not only 3 gold mines, but several silver ones, and Achilles' gold mine had been transferred to his name after the banquet. So her brother technically owned 4 gold mines. The girl was suddenly very excited, especially when Father mentioned she would receive a gold mine of her own after her 7th birthday. She wanted to grow up immediately. Her brother seemed to read her thoughts. He announced that if she gave him 1 kiss, he would hand over a gold mine. She was revolted by the childishness of the idea. Then Father joined in with the same offer. Looking at those 2 expectant idiots, the girl was speechless. Though honestly, more than taking things from family, she preferred to take things from enemies, especially from the Grand Duke Balon's household. Just as she was lost in that pleasant fantasy, Father and her brother caught her off guard and ambushed her from both sides. These 2 had learned to coordinate sneak attacks. Absolutely insufferable. The Demon King, who had destroyed the world in her previous life, had apparently been reincarnated. And he was now a young man lying in a crystal coffin, kept alive by magic stones. Seeing the enemy who had haunted her former life lying quietly before her, a wave of white-hot rage rose inside her. This time she was going to make him pay for everyone he had hurt in her previous life. Not long before, the Duchy of Nazca had submitted a visit request to the Empire. The Duchy of Nazca was one of the rare families that did not rely on solar magic to survive. In fact, to escape the sun, they had claimed the black dragon as their ancestor and had eventually become the Nazca bloodline, people with black dragon blood. Father found it a bit strange that such a famously reclusive duchy would suddenly request a visit. But he thought perhaps they had encountered some difficulty, and ultimately agreed to receive them. What he hadn't expected was for the Nazca family to arrive the very next day carrying a crystal coffin. Inside lay Iru, the duchy's sole heir. Everyone present was stunned. How could the heir to an entire duchy be lying in a crystal coffin? When the girl got a clear look at Iru's face, her own went cold. In her previous life, the girl had been the undisputed strongest S-rank hunter. 3 others had matched her in power: her brother, the Saint, and the Demon King. And this young man lying in the crystal coffin bore the Demon King's exact face. Was this a reincarnation or a coincidence? A hand reached over and touched her forehead. "Are you feeling unwell, little sister? You don't seem to have a fever." It was her brother, concerned. Father also looked worried. "You look frightened, sweetheart." She quickly shook her head and insisted she was fine. Meanwhile, the elder of the Duchy of Nazca had dropped to his knees. "Your Majesty, please, you must help us. We beg you to purify the curse binding Lord Iru." Word of Iru's situation quickly spread throughout the empire. Even the noble ladies' tea parties were buzzing with it. "I heard the heir of the Duchy of Nazca has been cursed. He's being kept alive entirely by a crystal coffin made from magic stones. They came to the empire seeking a way to break the curse." The Grand Duke's daughter immediately offered her expert opinion. "Our empire's magic all draws from the sun. Most people have fire or light affinities, and purification magic is extraordinarily rare. Not even the king, the prince, or the princess possesses it." At that, the Grand Duke's daughter told the nearby Rose to put the parasol away. Rose immediately put it away as fast as she could, terrified of being even a moment too slow. The Grand Duke's daughter had a notoriously unpredictable temper. At the last tea gathering, after someone mentioned that the princess would someday eclipse her social standing, she had used magic to burn that girl's hand, drenched her with a flower vase, and forced her to apologize publicly. Rose was too afraid to defy her in any way. Then the Grand Duke's daughter suddenly ordered Rose to lift her skirt and show her legs. Faced with such a humiliating command, Rose gripped her hem and didn't move, until the Grand Duke's daughter's impatience became visible. Then Rose slowly and tremblingly lifted the hem. Rose's legs, stone-like and petrified, were displayed for all to see. The moment the guests saw them, they began whispering and pointing. The truth was, Rose had simply once been struck by a petrification curse. Then, the Grand Duke's daughter began casting magic on Rose's legs. Remarkably, the moment the magic touched them, the petrification curse seemed to begin fading. Everyone watching broke into excited murmurs. Did the Grand Duke's daughter truly possess the legendary and incredibly rare purification magic? It seemed she was about to become an enormously valuable figure to the Duchy of Nazca. Meanwhile, the girl slipped away when no one was looking and crept to where the crystal coffin was being kept. Looking at the young man sleeping quietly inside, she couldn't help remarking that he was hardly some sleeping beauty. Though now that she thought about it, he was supposedly a descendant of the Black Dragon. Not surprising, given he was that man's reincarnation. The connection to the Black Dragon ran deep in his bones. She then used her skill on the young man, but the system could only identify his name. Everything else came back as an error. Still, that much was enough for the girl to confirm. This young man was the Demon King reborn. She leaned over the crystal coffin and studied his face again carefully. She murmured to herself that she had no intention of repeating the past. Then she resolved to complete the mission. Eliminate the traitor. The next second, an ice spike crystallized in her hand. She gripped it tightly and raised it to strike. Would she succeed in cutting this karmic thread between them once and for all? To bring down the Grand Duke's family, the girl had carefully arranged for the rumor that the Grand Duke's daughter possessed purification magic to spread as far and wide as possible. While the Grand Duke's household was reveling in their imminent triumph, they had no idea they had walked straight into the girl's trap. Not long before, the girl had gripped her ice spike, fully intending to end the Demon King's life in this one. It should have been easy. He was completely defenseless. And in her previous life, it had been her decisive choice to kill the Demon King that made her reunion with her family in this life possible. If she eliminated him again, she could secure peace for this lifetime. But in the moment before she struck, she hesitated. She couldn't bring herself to act. Unable to accept that about herself, she fled from the crystal coffin in a state of confused distress. And the moment she left, Iru slowly opened his golden eyes. He stared blankly at the girl's retreating figure. Then he closed his eyes again in pain, murmuring, "Why, Sina." Unable to eliminate the Demon King, the girl couldn't sleep that night. When she appeared at the breakfast table the next morning with deep shadows under her eyes, father and her brother were alarmed. They assumed the people from the Duchy of Nazca were causing her distress and immediately started talking about throwing them out. The girl found them a little excessive. She stretched lazily. "I'm just exhausted. I wish someone would hold me all day today." Father and her brother immediately started competing to be the one to hold her. Looking at her family so openly devoted to her, the girl finally smiled, genuinely for the first time in a while. Whatever else was happening, the Demon King wasn't affecting her daily life yet. She could spare his life for now. If he ever caused trouble, she would be the first to go deal with him. With that thought, the girl spread her arms wide toward father and her brother. "Now come hold me." Auntie Fiona came to visit, bringing her young son. The moment the girl laid eyes on that soft little bundle, her heart was practically melting. The maids watching the scene were moved to happy tears. Who could have imagined living to see two unbearably cute people in the same room? Auntie Fiona herself nearly fainted from the overload of adorableness. The aunt then brought out her signature pastries and served them to both the girl and her brother. After a single bite, the girl was convinced her aunt's baking was extraordinary. The praise made the aunt beam with joy. Having a girl to fuss over was simply different from having boys. Her brother, watching the two of them, shook his head. "Auntie, was the whole point of this visit really just the sweets?" The aunt's expression turned serious. "Actually, I came because I heard something strange." "You've probably heard. The Grand Duke's daughter entered social circles earlier than expected." Her brother was unimpressed. "So what? She can't hold a candle to a single one of my sister's toes." The wet nurse nodded in full agreement. "That's absolutely right. But not long ago, Miss Rose became her personal maid. The reason Miss Rose had apparently chosen to serve her willingly was said to be the Grand Duke's daughter's purification magic. It was widely known that Miss Rose had been struck by a petrification curse in childhood. The wet nurse found the claim absurd. Even among royalty, possessing purification magic was extraordinarily rare. The last member of the royal family known to have it had lived over 200 years ago. The aunt agreed it was incredible. But every lady who attended that tea party saw with their own eyes that the Grand Duke's daughter partially lifted Rose's petrification curse. The girl had nothing but contempt for what the Grand Duke's daughter was doing, revealing her purification magic at exactly this moment, clearly angling to forge a connection with the Duchy of Nazca. In that case, they might as well use it against her and make the whole thing blow up in her face. Seeing the girl's sharp, decisive little face, her aunt immediately scooped her up and smothered her with affection. The girl nearly couldn't breathe. Meanwhile, the aunt's young son grinned broadly and insisted on feeding the girl strawberries. She found him so adorable she simply couldn't refuse. She gave him cherries in return. The little one happily ate the cherries she had given him. The four of them had a delightful afternoon tea together. On the other side, the Grand Duke's daughter ran home excitedly to report her triumph. "Mother, father, I received a letter requesting my help from the Duchy of Nazca." The Grand Duke and his wife were thrilled. A letter like that was the kind only the king himself would normally receive. Their daughter was truly remarkable. In a previous life, she had been a renowned S-rank blacksmith and alchemist. The weapons she crafted had made a decisive difference in the war against the Demon King. In this life, however, she had ended up as a noble daughter cursed with petrification, at the mercy of a vicious girl who held her curse over her head. Fortunately, the girl, her benefactor's successor, had also been reborn into this world. She would not allow anyone to bully someone who had once been like a guardian to her. Not long before, word had spread everywhere that the Grand Duke's daughter had received the Duchy of Nazca's letter. This sent the other noble daughter's opinions of her soaring. After all, even the prince and princess had not received the letter. Their magic was said to be insufficient. And on top of that, the Grand Duke's daughter had earned the loyal devotion of Miss Rose. Even with the Grand Duke's son banished from the palace, the family's future looked secure. The Grand Duke's daughter herself was certain that the throne was only a matter of time. But Rose was deeply uneasy about the upcoming moment when the Grand Duke's daughter would attempt to purify the Nazca heir's curse. That evening, she went to the Grand Duke's daughter and asked about it. The Grand Duke's daughter was impatient. Of course I agreed to help them. They were asking so desperately. Rose was even more alarmed. She dropped to her knees. Please, I beg you, could you purify me a little more first? The Grand Duke's daughter was displeased. What? You're afraid that if I give my purification power to the Duchy of Nazca, there won't be enough left for you? Rose trembled as she tried to explain. It's not that, I'm just in so much pain. Before she finished speaking, the Grand Duke's daughter had kicked her to the floor. That's incredibly selfish. Trying to hoard such precious purification power for yourself. I don't care for people who are that selfish. Keep this up and I can't guarantee you'll remain my maid. Rose watched the Grand Duke's daughter leave, tears streaming silently down her face. She knew that her only means of easing the curse's agony was the Grand Duke's daughter. But the Grand Duke's daughter would likely never fully purify the curse. Keeping her in pain was how she controlled her. What Rose didn't know was that the girl's X-ray vision had witnessed the entire scene. Seeing that Rose bore a face identical to her elder sister Yuane's from her previous life, the girl was stunned. Sister Yuane had been the only S-rank hunter in her previous life with a dual-class ability. Her contribution to the war against the Demon King had been immeasurable, and she had always looked out for her and her brother. The weapons Yuane had crafted had saved her and her brother's lives multiple times at critical moments. The girl had always hoped to find her again in this life. Seeing that insufferable Grand Duke's daughter treat her that way nearly made her furious enough to intervene on the spot. Just then, the system issued a new mission: ruin the Grand Duke's daughter's reputation, and purify the Duchy of Nazca heir's curse. The girl understood. The Grand Duke's daughter wanted to use her purification power to consolidate her position, though the thought that he would wake up because of the Grand Duke's daughter irritated her. Then an idea struck her. She rummaged through her items and found a D-rank curse purification potion. Seeing it, she immediately had a plan. She went cheerfully to find Father. The next day, as expected, the Grand Duke's daughter agreed to the Duchy of Nazca's request. And today the king was personally arranging for her to meet with the Duchy of Nazca's representatives. The Grand Duke's daughter was more than happy to comply. After all, this signified the king's recognition of her healing ability. She put on her finest dress and entered the palace. The sight of it shocked everyone. Miss Rose had apparently given her this haute couture gown, and the ruby crown on the Grand Duke's daughter's head was a Roz family heirloom. It seemed the entire Roz family had completely submitted to the Grand Duke's daughter. Then the Grand Duke's daughter finally stood before the crystal coffin. Looking at the handsome face inside, she was already spinning elaborate romantic fantasies, imagining that both the prince and Rose would be at her mercy, and the throne would be hers. She could barely contain her glee. Just then, Father's group arrived. Seeing that the girl was no longer the center of attention the way she used to be, the Grand Duke's daughter was even more elated. She was on the verge of eclipsing the girl's status entirely. The 7-year-old princess, at her very first demonstration of purification power, won the voluntary loyalty of the Duchy of Nazca's prince, and drove the Grand Duke's daughter, who had been scheming to replace her, half mad with fury. What the Grand Duke's daughter didn't know was that the true ruler of the Duchy of Nazca was the Demon King who had been utterly devoted to the little princess in a previous life. Not long before, the Grand Duke's daughter was on the verge of publicly purifying the Duchy of Nazca prince's curse. The nobles who had been supporting the girl began to waver. But curiously, the people of the Duchy of Nazca seemed to favor the girl over the Grand Duke's daughter. The elder suddenly realized why. The prince's own emotions were almost certainly influencing their reactions. Gradually, as that influence spread, the wavering nobles began once again showing their appreciation for the girl. The Grand Duke's daughter bit her lip in fury. Then Father called the Grand Duke's daughter forward and confirmed once more whether she genuinely possessed purification power. She answered with complete confidence. She would succeed in purifying the Prince of Nazca's curse. She also made a demand of Father. The head attendant found her arrogance somewhat offensive. The Grand Duchess, however, was unbothered. Her daughter was a once-in-a-century purification talent after all. The last person to possess purification power was the one who defeated 5 brothers to claim the throne, so naturally her daughter deserved commensurate recognition. Everyone understood what the Grand Duchess was really after. She wanted to use this moment to push her daughter into a princess's position. But the Grand Duke's daughter had not yet succeeded in purifying anything. So Father declared, "Let this purification serve as the Grand Duke's daughter's royal ability certification. If she failed, she would forfeit her claim to royal succession. A few years earlier, after the Grand Duke's son had been thoroughly defeated by her brother, that was exactly how he had lost his right of succession. The Grand Duchess began to panic. But this isn't the same as a royal magic contest. The girl immediately countered, "Isn't proving your purification power against a real curse far more meaningful than a royal contest?" In the end, the Grand Duke's daughter's purification attempt was formally recognized as a royal ability certification. If she succeeded, she would become a princess. If she failed, she would lose both her succession rights and her gold mine. Since the Grand Duke's son's gold mine had already been reclaimed, the Grand Duke's daughter's mine was likely the family's only remaining one. With her competitive pride now fully ignited, the Grand Duke's daughter gritted her teeth and accepted the challenge. She was going to use this to replace the girl and drive her from the palace. Then, at father's command, the Grand Duke's daughter began her purification attempt on the Prince of Nazca. But even after exhausting every drop of her magic, the prince showed absolutely no sign of waking. The Grand Duke's daughter's face twisted. What she didn't know was that the prince hadn't been under any curse at all. He had a void inside him that absorbed magical energy. And since magic was the very source of vitality, he remained in a continuous state of unconsciousness. At this point, the system was urgently prompting the girl again to kill the prince. It seemed keeping him alive was a real risk of history repeating itself. Meanwhile, as the prince continued to show no signs of waking, murmurs of doubt began to rise around them. The Grand Duke's daughter's nerves finally snapped. She lunged forward and began pounding frantically on the crystal coffin. Get up right now! I already purified you. I did it!" The people of the Duchy of Nazca immediately pulled her away from the coffin. Then they threw her to the ground without ceremony. The Grand Duke's daughter was overcome with humiliation. She demanded father take her side. Instead, the girl's cold mockery was all she got. Only then did the Grand Duke's daughter realize she had been played. She rounded on the girl, screaming accusations. Everyone around them was alarmed by her erratic behavior. Apparently, the only one who could hear what the girl had said was the Grand Duke's daughter herself. From everyone else's perspective, she was just a woman ranting at nothing. The elder of the Duchy of Nazca concluded that the Grand Duke's daughter had deceived them all along. The Grand Duke's daughter was frantic. She begged Miss Rose to vouch for her. The next second, Miss Rose suddenly collapsed. The girl immediately rushed to her side. And the moment she made contact with Miss Rose, the sunstone blazed with brilliant light. Bathed in that radiance, the girl quickly fed Miss Rose an A-rank purification potion. The moment it was administered, the system notified her. Miss Rose's petrification curse had been removed. She then gave her a stamina recovery drink. Once she had done all of this, the light around them faded. The Grand Duke's daughter demanded to know what the girl had just done. The girl only made a face at her. Just then, Marquis Elris, Miss Rose's father, came rushing in with frantic urgency. He scooped Rose up and kept calling her name. Seeing that familiar face, the girl was swept back into memory. He was Yuane's father. She had met him at Yuane's funeral. Even though she had failed to protect Yuane, the kind man had not blamed her. He had even expressed his gratitude. She hadn't expected to have the chance to see him again in this life. This time, she would never let father and daughter be separated. Marquis Elris then noticed his daughter's legs, completely restored. He hadn't imagined the girl would be able to fully lift Rose's curse, which meant she possessed powerful purification magic of her own. When Marquis Elris realized this, he immediately bowed deeply to the girl and declared that the Elris family would never forget this debt. The girl had just opened her mouth to tell him it was no trouble, when the crystal coffin behind her suddenly exploded open. And to everyone's astonishment, the Prince of Nazca slowly rose to his feet. The Grand Duke's daughter rushed to snatch the fallen crown from the floor and put it on her head. Then she turned to father to claim credit. And then she ordered the Duchy of Nazca representatives who had treated her roughly to kneel and apologize. Just as she was basking in her own triumph, the prince suddenly stopped the elder who was about to bow. He said he wished to personally express his gratitude to the one who had helped him. Then, in front of everyone, he walked straight past the Grand Duke's daughter and dropped to one knee before the girl with an expression of complete reverence. I, Iru of the Duchy of Nazca, pay my respects to my benefactor. At the ability certification test, the 7-year-old princess successfully purified both the Prince of Nazca and Miss Rose's curses, instantly becoming the undeniable center of attention. The spotlight that was supposed to belong to the Grand Duke's daughter had gone to someone who turned out to have no purification power at all. Not long before, the girl had unexpectedly managed to wake the long unconscious Prince of Nazca and received a formal bow from him. While the girl was still trying to make sense of what had just happened, the Grand Duke's daughter couldn't contain herself. "What are you talking about?" "This is completely outrageous. I was the one who purified your curse." "You must be confused after waking up." She grabbed the prince's shoulder hard. He pried her off with force. Then he looked at her with a darkened expression. "I only just woke up, but I was conscious throughout my coma." He turned to look at the girl with complete sincerity. "So I could never mistake my benefactor." He then pressed a reverent kiss to the back of the girl's hand. She stood frozen. The next second, Father scooped her up. He and her brother shifted into full alert mode. "Sweetheart, let Father wipe your hand clean. You dare kiss my sister's hand? Try that again and we'll stuff you back in that coffin." Seeing the two of them in full overprotective mode, the girl quickly clapped her hands together to get their attention. "So then, the ability certification test is hereby concluded. The Grand Duke's daughter failed her purification. I win the wager." Technically, it wasn't she who had woken the prince, but a free win was a free win. Everyone turned to the girl and began heaping praise on her. The Grand Duke and his wife had gone white. The Grand Duke's daughter wept bitter tears of humiliation. That very evening, the Grand Duke's estate was thoroughly searched by a large group of people. When the head attendant arrived to retrieve the gold mine deed on the girl's behalf, the Grand Duchess confronted him. "Head attendant, isn't this going too far? You're here for one deed, but you've turned our entire estate upside down." The head attendant shook his head hastily. "Your Grace, there's been a misunderstanding. I don't know any of these people." The Grand Duke's daughter snapped, "If they're not yours, then whose are they?" Then a familiar voice came from behind them. "They were sent by us." It was Marquis Elris and his daughter. The Grand Duke's daughter rushed forward and grabbed Rose's hands warmly. "Miss Rose, what are you doing here? Are you all right? What is happening?" Rose's response was cold. "After I fainted and woke again, I felt remarkably better. So I came with my father, because there is something I absolutely need to say to you." The Grand Duke's daughter assumed Rose had come to thank her. "You really didn't need to go to such lengths. Although I suppose it makes sense. After all, I was the one who came to your aid when you were suffering under that curse." Before she could finish, Rose snatched the crown from her head. Then Rose fixed her with a cold stare. "Take off that dress. You have no right to wear it." The Grand Duke's daughter hadn't expected Rose to suddenly turn on her like this. She stared in horror. "What did you say?" Seeing her flustered expression, Rose let out a cold laugh. "So you're not only cruel, you also can't follow basic instructions." The humiliated Grand Duke's daughter shook with fury. She pointed at Rose and screamed, "How dare you! Just this morning you were fawning all over me, you ungrateful wretch!" Rose listened to this, as if hearing the most ridiculous thing in the world. "My gratitude? You mean how you used my curse as leverage to give me orders and humiliate me every day? Well then, now you have received my gratitude. You should be thankful." The Grand Duke's daughter immediately shot back. "I helped purify your curse. Doesn't that count for anything?" Rose held up one finger. "You purified an insignificant fraction of it. That tiny bit of help is not worth a family heirloom and a couture gown, so I am reclaiming them. And every gift sent to you up to now, I'm taking those back too." The Grand Duke's daughter exploded. "You already gave them to me. Once something reaches my hands, it's mine. What gives you the right to take back my things?" Before she could finish, Rose's attendants forcibly restrained her and dragged her away. The Grand Duchess then sidled up to Rose with a syrupy smile. "So then, Miss Elris, what about your family's support for ours?" Rose glanced at her coolly. "Naturally, it will be withdrawn. If you have objections, you're welcome to take us to court." The Grand Duchess felt the floor drop out from under her. Meanwhile, Rose's attendants had already stripped the gown from the Grand Duke's daughter. She raged as it was taken. "You come running when you need something, then take it all back without mercy when you don't. Are those things really that important? I genuinely did purify you, even if only a little." Rose heard this and gave a cold smile. She pulled a small gemstone from the gown and tossed it at the Grand Duke's daughter's feet. "That should more than cover your payment. Though frankly, that stone is probably worth more than the fraction of curse you removed." The humiliated Grand Duke's daughter snarled, "Even if you took them back, they don't suit someone like you either." Rose glanced back with complete indifference. You're right, they don't suit either of us. There is only one person truly worthy of them. And that is that princess, the one who shines like an angel. The once fearsome demon king came with his entire nation in pursuit of one girl, only to receive a thorough beating for his trouble. But he wasn't easily scared off. Instead, he looked up at her with a wounded expression and begged her forgiveness. So the girl decided to find out exactly what he was up to. Then when they shook hands, the demon king simply fell forward into her arms. Not long before, the people of the entire empire had learned the truth about the Grand Duke's family. And the revelation of the girl's purification power had filled the nation with pride. The head attendant had also successfully secured the gold mine deed for her. She was thrilled, but the wretched system picked that exact moment to crash again. It dampened her mood considerably. Father noticed at once and asked her carefully what was wrong. She quickly waved it off and insisted she was fine. Then she held up the gold mine deed and bragged about it at length. That finally put Father and her brother at ease. As the three of them walked hand in hand down the long corridor, the girl found herself thinking, for no clear reason, about the tiresome Prince of Nazca. She let out a soft sigh without thinking. Father and her brother immediately snapped to full alert. They both reached the same conclusion. The Prince of Nazca was disturbing their girl, and he had to go. The girl was exasperated. She raised her voice at them. You two are unbelievable. I've said it has nothing to do with Iru. But mentioning his name only made Father and her brother angrier than ever. She even knew the Prince of Nazca's name. That made getting rid of him a matter of even greater urgency. Seeing there was no winning this argument with two ridiculous people, she switched tactics. Father, brother, my legs are hurting a little. Could you carry me? I'd love to take a walk in the garden. Predictably, those words brought them both to heel instantly. That approach never failed. That afternoon, Marquis Elris and Rose came to express their thanks in person. Father and her brother insisted on staying by her side, worried her kindness would be taken advantage of. The girl found them insufferable. But thinking about it, the Elris family had also been old friends of her family in her previous life. It was actually a good chance for Father and her brother to get to know them better. What she hadn't expected was for Marquis Elris and Rose to drop to their knees the moment they arrived. Your Highness, we are deeply grateful for your kindness to my daughter, but we ask that you punish me. I am a guilty man who broke the covenant. The girl had no idea what he was talking about. She looked to Father. Apparently, the founding king had once made a pact with the founding noble families. They agreed never to interfere in matters of succession. In return, the founding king gave the Elris family's ancestors 10 gold mines and a granary. This was meant to preserve the fairness of the succession process. For generations, the Elris family had honored that pledge faithfully. But recently they had broken it. Marquis Elris bowed his head over and over. Your Majesty, I was blinded by the desperation to save my daughter. The fault is entirely mine. Rose began crying beside him. No, it's my fault. Father only did it for my sake, to help lift my curse. The girl watched the two of them plead desperately and felt torn. Then Marquis Elris, as a gesture of sincerity, offered the girl their family heirloom. She hadn't expected him to present something so precious to her personally. Father and her brother looked warmly approving. But of course, the useless system was no help at all at the critical moment. While the girl was anxiously wondering what to do, Father suddenly spoke. Very well. As requested, the family's title and assets will be transferred to the princess. Sensing the situation going the wrong way, the girl immediately pretended to cry. Father and her brother came flying to her side in a panic, but she only said she was deeply moved. For a moment, looking at Marquis Elris, a father so devoted to his daughter, she had seen the shadows of Father and her brother. Father and her brother immediately vowed that no matter what happened, they would always be her unwavering support. The girl threw her arms around all three of them and held on tight. She let the sentiment wash over her, completely ignoring everyone else in the room. Marquis Elris and Rose stared, thoroughly taken aback. After regaining his composure, Father delivered his final ruling on the Elris family. Regardless of circumstance, the fact that you broke the covenant cannot be changed. However, in recognition of your subsequent support of the princess, I will grant the princess the authority to decide your punishment. The girl simply smiled and extended her hand toward Rose. Then let us be friends from now on. Rose couldn't believe the girl would simply let them off so easily. She immediately said she would gladly become the girl's personal maid and serve her for life. Father and her brother were immediately jealous. Another person had joined the competition for her attention. That night, the girl stared at her system as it threw error after error, deep in thought. Lately, it couldn't even display the daily missions properly. Thinking it over carefully, every mission the system had given her was tied directly to something happening in her real life. It also kept giving her skills and items that shouldn't belong to her. Some of them had even been things that belonged to the Demon King in her previous life. These bizarre rewards had been troubling her. She had barely slept these past few nights. Fortunately, Father suggested a countryside outing out of the blue. That at last gave her a chance to put it all aside for a while and relax. She had barely slept these past few nights. Fortunately, Father suddenly suggested a countryside outing, which finally gave her a brief chance to set it all aside and relax. Still, it was fortunate that saving Rose had earned her a skill upgrade voucher. She immediately used it to upgrade her ability to see others' magical power. It required holding hands and had a time limit, which was inconvenient, but it was still an extremely useful ability. Just then, the girl suddenly spotted a massive boulder blocking the road ahead of the carriage. The next second, Iru came down the stone steps of the boulder. It turned out the boulder was actually the Duchy of Nazca, and the reason he had staged this was because Father had abruptly ordered him to leave. Thinking of how Father and her brother had deceived her, the girl told them coldly that she was very disappointed in them. Then she flew toward Iru. The moment he saw her, Iru immediately dropped to one knee and thanked her for saving his life. He felt it would be too rude to leave without properly expressing his gratitude first. But the girl heard this and punched him. Back in her previous life, she had sworn that if she ever laid eyes on the Demon King again, she would give him a proper beating. She had finally made good on that promise. After the hit, Iru only looked at her with a forlorn expression. "Does that make you feel a little better? But please don't keep going. You might actually kill me." The girl was exasperated by his slippery composure. Then she smiled and extended her hand to him. "Then let's start over with a proper greeting." The moment Iru took her hand, the girl allowed a quiet, knowing smile. Now she could finally probe his magical power. But what she found was not what she expected. Not only did she sense nothing of his magic, she also discovered a strange black void where his heart should be. Just as she was puzzling over this strange phenomenon, Iru suddenly lost control and fell forward into her arms. She felt his life force draining away rapidly, and panic set in. Normally, magical energy originates in both the heart and the brain. If either is damaged, the whole body falls into serious crisis. With Iru's heart damaged like this, he was on the verge of dying. The Grand Duke's daughter, in a state of magical meltdown, nearly injured innocent bystanders. Fortunately, the little princess stepped in at the critical moment and knocked her down. And in doing so, discovered that the Grand Duke was using his own daughter to plot something. Not long before, Iru had collapsed right in front of the girl. Watching his life slip away, she gritted her teeth and used her precious pee-pee boing boing skill. The moment she activated it, Iru's condition rapidly stabilized. The girl sent the unconscious Iru back to the Duchy of Nazca and told the elder to relay a message. "I've saved you twice now. Your life belongs to me." Just then, Iru happened to regain consciousness. He called out after her retreating figure with all his effort. "I swear to stake everything I have on repaying this debt." The girl was taken aback. He had used a vow-binding spell to say that. And he had dropped the formal speech he had always used with her, speaking to her plainly for the first time. He was getting more and more like the Demon King from her previous life. When the girl came back down to the ground, Father and her brother rushed over anxiously, fussing over her. But she hadn't forgotten how those two had deceived her, so she gave them nothing but the cold shoulder. She happily took Rose's hand and walked back to the palace together. On the other side, the Grand Duke returned home to find his daughter a hollow wreck and was disgusted. "Who are you putting on this pathetic display for? If you can prove your solar magic exceeds the princess and prince's, we still have a chance to turn things around. There's a method to increase your magical power. Are you willing to try it?" The Grand Duke's daughter's eyes lit up at once. She agreed to her father's plan without hesitation, little knowing it would be the beginning of her nightmare. 3 days passed. The girl was in the garden playing with Rose. She asked Rose if she had any hobbies. In the past, the curse had consumed Rose's life too completely for her to develop any. But now that she had recovered her health, she finally had the time. Just then, one of the maids proudly showed off a series of portrait drawings she had made of the girl from infancy to the present. She added that if Rose ever wanted to learn, she would teach her everything she knew. Rose was a little startled by the enthusiasm. "That's very kind of you. But I think we need to deal with that father-son situation first." At the mention of them, father and her brother jumped out looking miserable. "Sweetheart, you haven't spoken to us in 3 days. We can't eat, we can't sleep." The girl looked at this pitiful pair and sighed. "Then can you promise me you'll never do anything like that again?" Hearing her willing to give them a chance, they both immediately swore in unison that they never would. So the girl begrudgingly forgave them. Overjoyed, father and son both swept her into a hug. The girl noticed the sunstone above the castle. "I mean, how are you two so happy the sunstone started glowing?" But both insisted it had nothing to do with them. So why had the sunstone suddenly lit up? Meanwhile, in a dress shop on a street nearby, the gown the Grand Duke's daughter had worn was hanging there in plain sight on a rack. It turned out Rose had deceived the Grand Duke's daughter all along. This wasn't a custom piece made especially for her. It was a defective item that had been sitting unsold for 2 years. Just as several noblewomen were cheerfully gossiping about it, the Grand Duke's daughter happened to overhear every word. Realizing the gown she had worn was nothing more than a reject, she clenched her fist. Thinking then of the gown Rose had custom made specifically for the girl, her rage hit its peak. Why did everyone only ever love that hateful girl? Then the Grand Duke's daughter's magic suddenly began to surge out of control. A searing pain tore through her entire body. Thinking of everything she had endured these past days, she lost all ability to hold herself together. People around her fled in terror. Suddenly a crash rang out from above. The next second, the girl dropped straight onto the Grand Duke's daughter. "Hey, Carrot Top, and what exactly are you doing?" At the sight of the girl, the Grand Duke's daughter completely lost control. She began attacking the girl wildly. The girl could see she was in a seriously abnormal state, and her magic looked strange. So the girl knocked her down with a single punch. The Grand Duke's daughter immediately clutched her face, screaming that it hurt. The Grand Duke immediately ordered her taken home. He then turned to the girl and apologized. "Forgive me, Your Highness. My daughter suffered a severe shock from failing the certification test and temporarily lost her reason." Before the girl could even respond, father and her brother came charging in with murder in their eyes. "She dared attack my daughter. Not even both your deaths would be sufficient apology." The girl quickly signaled father to calm down. There were onlookers. Still, his reaction was what a normal father should feel. The Grand Duke's behavior just now had been visibly guilty. His daughter's condition clearly had something to do with him. Then the Grand Duke suddenly began making accusations in front of the crowd. What exactly did my poor daughter do wrong? Among the royal family, there has always been an unspoken right to compete for succession. If that qualifies as treason, then surely someone who killed 5 of his own kin should be executed 5 times over. Father knew exactly who he was referring to. He replied, cold and unhurried. "You looked down on me so thoroughly back then. I imagine you never expected me to end up on the throne. When you spewed that filth at me, do you know why I couldn't be bothered to hurt you? Because you weren't even worth killing." Father's words sent the Grand Duke shaking with fury. Father then ordered him and his daughter arrested. The Grand Duke immediately objected. Everyone had just witnessed the girl and the Grand Duke's daughter fighting. That meant a certification challenge had already begun. The previous one had only been over gold mine rights. This one was a challenge for succession itself. As royalty, the family had an obligation to accept such a challenge. Father and her brother's expressions darkened. But the girl accepted the challenge without a moment's hesitation. She just looked down at the Grand Duke's daughter, half dead on the floor, and curled her lip in contempt. If the certification continued right now, she would still win without doing anything. The Grand Duke quickly explained that the Grand Duke's daughter had only just reawakened her magic. She had fainted due to temporary instability, nothing more. The girl immediately flew over to examine the Grand Duke's daughter. After completing her assessment, she allowed herself a cold smile. "Very well. Let us resume the certification once the Grand Duke's daughter has recovered. On one condition, I will personally oversee her care."